In order to climb the ladder, we all have to start at the bottom. Today, the journey up the rungs begins, and step by step, drivers have to avoid the pitfalls that come with superspeedway racing. One small mistake, and you can be eliminated right from the get-go. Who will make it to the big show? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch the first heats of the 2023 Podium 500, and you'll see it all live here on Podium Esports. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is DJ Clark. Behind the scenes is our director, Ryan Bauer, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. DJ, I'm looking forward to this because February means one thing for race fans, and that is Daytona.
Yes, it certainly does here, Joe. And with the next-gen cars, we've only seen an increase in excitement in the super speedway racing. A lot of different strategies to play out here. And we get started tonight with the heat races to see who's going to be going to the big show, who's going to be going to the duels, and who's going to have to fight back in the last chance qualifiers.
Exactly. A lot of money is on the line. Even tonight, there's going to be money rewarded, and we'll go over that in a little bit. But first, let's take a quick look at the racetrack here today. And if you're unfamiliar with Daytona, you're in for a treat. 2.5 miles and with 31-degree banking in the main corners. Now, the Tri-Oval has 18, but it is a high-speed, high-tension track where you're going to see people have to make split-second decisions and very close pack racing quarters. So that is going to be intense all throughout as the drivers have very few laps to try to make up space. And though it is possible to pass, they don't want to make ill-advised moves, as cautions will certainly hurt their time that they have to try and get into the top spots to advance through these heats. Now, speaking of the heats, why don't we quickly go through our race details. DJ, what's happening with this Podium 500 for the unfamiliar?
Well, Joe, the way that this works is we've got a series of heat races here to determine who is going to advance on into the duels, who's going to advance on into the last chance qualifiers, and who will be eliminated at the end of the night. The top 5 automatically advance to the duels, 6 through 13 go back to the LCQs. But how do we get there? Well, it's going to be a 20-lap run for these drivers. No green-white checker attempts, but yellow flags are active. It's a fixed setup here, so all that matters, the only difference between these cars is the fleshy part behind the wheel. It's the drivers themselves. Drivers do get a faster pair, but there is a 17x incident limit, so that is going to be crucial to be able to keep an eye on. But the big thing on the line here tonight is, as you hinted at earlier, we're already going to get a little bit of money on the line. You win a heat race here tonight, you win a heat race here tomorrow, that's $50 in your pocket.
Exactly. And when you get up to the big show, when they finally have the main competition, it's over $1,000 that they're going to be competing for the win. That's just for the win. There's all other kinds of prizes all down the order. But to get there, you have to finish within a certain number of positions here on this race. That, I think, is the most nerve-wracking aspect of this, DJ, is the fact that if you do wind up in one of those wrecks, while you have that spare car, it's going to be so easy to find yourself out of it in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, it certainly is. And the one thing drivers are going to be able to use to their advantage is coming in, getting that spare car. If we're under yellow flag conditions, they're going to be able to put themselves back up forward and get themselves back into the pack. But the problem is, as you said, Joe, is this is pack racing here at Daytona. So it's not like you're able to scythe your way up through the field. You've got to hook up with those drivers around you, be patient, and try to find your way forward. And you do not want to find yourself being bumped back to the back.
Seems like there are a few that are gambling on starting from the back to avoid some problems, because in our small qualifying session, they only get one lap, and I see one other car that can set a lap time. We've had 24 of our, I think, roughly 30 drivers set times, so some are trying to start from the tail end of the field. Oh no, J.R. Miller's not actually going to be able to set a time. Just watched him cross, and he didn't get a time on the board. That means that everybody is in fact set for this heat event. So our grid will start to come together, and we'll have our first go at things here of multiple heats tonight. So the first of multiple nights, actually. And there you can see on the front row, Dylan Alt will start it on the pole with Jason Middleton in second. It's Jackson Carr in third, followed by Daniel Smallwood in fourth. Troy Sabat will be P5. From there, Matthew Dula starts in the sixth position, Daniel Adam in P7, and Lucas Whitehead starts eighth. Alex Link will be 9th, and outside of row 5 has Greg Janzek.
In 11th place, it's going to be Hunter J. O'Gagan and then Dustin Shepard to his outside in P12. P13 is going to be George Belfons, followed by Justin McMahon. Then in P15, it's going to be Parker Collins and Tyler Meeks. From the row behind them, row 9, it's going to be Ryan Potter and Justin Miller. And rounding out your top 20, it'll be Steve Bocock and Dustin Rivas.
Michael Halick will be starting from 21st, Jordan Corrin in 22nd. After that, it's TJ Lair and Joe McAdory, the last two to set times. For Jason Maines, Bill Schoonover, J.R. Miller, Ralph Jones, Ross Corlett, Ron Morris Jr., and Brandon Wynn will not take part in this, excuse me. Those drivers will be starting at the back of the field. We'll see Brandon in a later heat, signed up to the wrong one accidentally, but he's made his way over to the correct one by now. You can see them starting out on pit lane. We'll be getting going here briefly. And what I'm curious about, DJ, is, you know, in super speedway racing, we often talk about trying to make sure and bide your time and wait for the right moment to start making the moves. 20 laps is extremely short. So if you're at the back of the field, you almost have to start going immediately.
Yeah, you've really got to get a move on there, and remember that 13th position, that is going to be the last driver to advance on, and there it's only going to be the last chance qualifier. So I think you're going to see a lot of jostling of drivers trying to push their way up into those positions. It's going to be very, very tricky to be able to do, but I think drivers are going to be a little bit itchy if you're starting back around the position of Jordan Corrin or Michael Halick there. You're going to see some drivers trying to push their way forward. We may see a few incidents actually taking place as a result of that, as drivers really try to scramble for those positions.
Yeah, and I gotta think that the risk versus reward is going to have to take some incredible balance here today to make sure that they don't do anything silly, but at the same time not waste time and manage to try and get themselves up into the transfer spots. Essentially, for today, less than half of the drivers will be able to continue on. Everybody else will be done for the remainder of this multi-day event that sees many, many racers come out. Hundreds, literally hundreds of drivers come and compete for this each year. Looks like we are getting ready to go as they exit out of turn 4. iRacing pace car getting ready to release Dylan Alt up on the top spot. There it goes, the black stripe driver waiting patiently. And there's the green flag. It's our first heat of the 2023 Podium 500. See, we got through that first one under green, although they had a bit of a checkup at the back where cars had to scatter. Not sure what caused the scare, but thankfully it did not cause a yellow. In fact, it doesn't seem that anybody actually spun out from that. Meanwhile, it is a very clean-looking 2 rows here up in the main pack, as the drivers don't seem to be too antsy to make any great moves right now. Maybe they're looking for that halfway mark in this short race.
Yeah, I think they probably are, Joe. I'm seeing a lot of good restraint here from these leading drivers. They're really and truly just keeping in line. There was a little bit of moving around in the back as drivers tried to pick the line that was going to work best for them, but it looks like now they've really all been able to send themselves out. And crucially, I'm not seeing any bump drafting coming through the high banks. You're seeing that bump draft take place on the straightaways, which is exactly where you need it to play out. Good, smart racing from these drivers.
their little checkup, this time on the bottom line from the very front. Thankfully, nothing came of it. Alt is still leading that bottom line. Lost a little ground to Middleton up on the top side in the 69 machine. He's got Smallwood behind him giving the bump, and same thing for Alt. He's got Carr in the 55 giving hard pushes. In fact, he regains all the ground he lost quite quickly.
And a little bit of a bump there for Smallwood coming on the back of the 69 of Jason Middleton. That low line starting to get a little bit of momentum through the corner as the high lane spreads out a little bit. Now they're going to hook back up, and you see there your leader, Dylan Alt, jumping up on the high line, and Jackson Carr following him up.
Yeah, so both of them managed to find space. Ooh, and it's getting a little dicey a little farther in the pack, going 3 wide. Someone jumping up to the high side. That looks like the number 35, I think, who has managed to find some space. That puts the 11 into the sucker hole. And unfortunately for Dustin Shepard, he goes right to the back.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate there for Dustin. Had absolutely nowhere to go for them. And now we're just seeing that lower line try to get a little bit more of that momentum, try to bring everything back in together here, because the high lane looks like the highway to go. A little bit of movement mid-pack, but everybody's still staying relatively calm.
That second group that I mentioned that lost touch, they're about 4 seconds back. Justin Miller might be hoping for a caution to catch them back up. They've also got TJ Laird, Dustin Reeves, J.R. Miller, Michael Halick, and Joe McAdory in that second group. They're not out of it, but if this stays green, it's going to be extremely difficult for them to take the win.
Yeah, going to be very, very difficult for them to do. And we're already a quarter lap down, a quarter of the way down in this first heat race, and it just looks like more and more that low lane starting to lose out. I saw the number 23, that's Craig Janczak, losing a little bit of ground. He got put into that middle of the field, so he's going to fall back down as everybody still tries to find the good line.
That's Sabat in the blue and white there, leading the bottom line right now. Adam behind him in the orange and white, and they seem decently hooked up. But like you said, just the bottom line cannot go in the same fashion that the top line seems to manage here. And we're already 6 laps in, so a quarter of the way through this short heat race. And your top 5 up at the, mostly the top line seem to be sitting pretty well. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw more drivers up at the front, maybe try and find an opening in there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised as well, but I think the big problem right now is those drivers down on the low side. There's just no room at the end. They can't find a way to move themselves up safely. I've seen a couple of drivers farther back down in the field try to maybe look a little bit low, try to be able to hold themselves out. But again, that momentum on the high line, the more cars you have working in tandem with one another, the more momentum, the more energy you're going to gain, and the faster you're going to be running. And so right now, I think that low line just needs some friends to come down and help them out.
And again, if you missed our pre-race show, this is a fixed setup series, so the drivers can't really make any difference in that realm. It's all down to how you strategize, where you place your car. Well, a person on the bubble right now looks to be George Balfons. Craig Jansnick also kind of hovering around that 13th position. There's more than 13 in this first group, so there's going to be some disappointed drivers unless we see a few drop away from this top pack here in the coming laps as they come back around. Bottom lane now starting to gain just a little bit. Looks like the double lot has, oh, well, no, when he tries to abandon, almost doesn't find the space, but the 16 checks up just in time.
Ooh, that got a little hairy, and there's still a little bit of hairiness back down in the field. The 21 and the 87 having a little bit of problem. That's Parker Collins there and Jordan Corrin. They looked a little bit squirrely coming down through the corners, able to get everything together. Now Corrin's going to be left out in the middle, as now we've got a 3-lane highway and a yellow in the back.
First caution, that's going to be Steve Balcock, unfortunately, getting turned around. Looks like he tried to drift up high, and Balfans was in the way. So that sent him spinning down to the infield. Did hit the inside wall pretty hard. Looks like we got a replay, DJ. Let's take a closer look.
So this is coming off of turn 2 right now. There you see a little bit of the drift. That's one of the cars coming back, and it looks like just a miscommunication there with Balfons, and I'm not entirely sure who that was that he made contact with. Big lick into that inside barrier. That number 12 is for sure going to need a fast repair.
Yeah, Steve Balcock is the one that came across his bow there. And both walls, honestly, hit the outside one pretty hard, and then The inside one just blasted the corner of that machine, unfortunately. Everybody else unscathed, so that's the good news, is that everybody else is fine, and Steve still has his spare car, which he hasn't come in for yet. He will once the pit lane opens, and he can get back out there on the lead lap. So it's not race over. He's just set himself at a bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah, he set himself at a disadvantage, and now the biggest thing is he's going to have to make sure that there's not a checkup there to the inside or outside farther back in the field, because that is going to put him well down the order like we saw last time. So going to have to sort of be smart about trying to move his way up forward.
No need for pit stops with it being only 20 laps, so pretty much everybody should be staying out besides Steve. While we wait for that to happen, we want to remind you that this year's Podium 500 is brought to you by Eric Messer Photography, the official photographer of the Madhouse, Bowman Gray Stadium. Eric is open for freelance hires for any racing organization in the Carolinas and Virginia. For more information, visit his website at e-m-photo.com. Create memories, not just photos. So, we did have a couple cars in the back come in for stops. Not sure if maybe they got a little damage from something or what, but Justin Miller's been in, and Balfons Jr., who probably had just a tiny bit of damage from that incident, is also taking repairs. And Joe McAdory did a drive-through, but he still has a black flag, and I'm not sure what that's for.
I'm not sure either, Joe, so we'll have to see. I don't think that's going to be incident limits here at this point. We haven't seen enough beating and banging really to be able to get that to play out. But we will have to be able to see, as it does look like we're going to have, I think, one more lap of caution here as they work their way around. Now, the one thing we haven't talked about is track temperatures right now. 83 degrees Fahrenheit out on track, right about in that Goldilocks zone that we like to talk about. That means the tires are going to be nice and warm, nice and sticky to be able to get as much grip as possible, but they're not going to have to worry too terribly much about overheating in a short 20-lap race like this.
Yep, should be pretty handy for getting up to speed quickly and not getting too loose out there. I went and double-checked on McAdory, and he didn't speed in pit lane on his way through, so I thought maybe he was serving a penalty of some sort from like a jump start or something, and then sped on his way through the pit lane. But no, he obeyed it, and he's coming in again. Still could be, maybe he was supposed to serve a stop and go for whatever he was trying to serve that penalty for, and just misread his instructions. But whatever the case, he's going to give it another shot, and he'll come back out in the back of the field.
Yeah, he'll come back in the back here, and I really don't want to be in that position with only about 10 laps to go here. When we go back to green flag conditions, it's going to be a lot of room to try to make up, and you know, this is really the point where I think we're going to see some of those drivers that are 14th on back really start to try to push here a little bit more, and we're going to see potentially some 3-lane racing, I think, by the time we get to the end here.
Alt's still going to be the leader when we get going once again. Pretty interesting spread of the iRating in this as well, with Alt, as I mentioned, he's at the pro level on iRacing in the eNASCAR series. He's got an 8K iRating. But then it's not too shabby behind him. You see some 6K drivers, 4K, 5K drivers, all the way down to as low as about 1,400. So it's as I said, a bit of an interesting spread out there, but the beautiful thing about super speedway racing, DJ, is it's kind of the great equalizer.
Yeah, it really and truly is. As long as you've got patience and calmness behind the wheel of the car, you're going to be able to find yourself in a good position. You've just got to make sure that you keep a good head on your shoulders and don't try to go too hard too early here. We are getting into the final stages of the race, but you still got to keep a good head on your shoulders. So we're going to come back to green flag racing here as the pace car pulls off down pit lane.
McAdory did get back in time, it looks like. And the green flag is out as Alt starts to accelerate away. Middleton on the bottom line below is following him, but look at the gap that they made, and they're going to immediately jump back up to the top side.
Yeah, it just looks like that is the high lane to be on here. Alex Link going to be leading the way down on the low side. He's going to get a little bit of a push there from Matthew Dula, and they're going to have to be careful about that. Lot of movement there from Jackson Carr in the 55 as they come off a turn 2.
Bit of a break there in the middle of the pack. That's Tyler Meeks in 13th position. Well, there you go. That's the spot that you want to be in, but I think they're close enough that you're going to see that second group start to suck up to them, and indeed McMahon has got himself right up there, and they're all going to the bottom line there in that second group. So that's interesting. The top line's been the quick one up front, but they like the looks of the shorter distance around this circuit. We are now down to 8 laps to go.
Ooh, and a little bit of a sketchy moment there down on the bottom line. That was Jordan Corrin giving a push to the pusher there of Matthew Dula and the 17 of Alex Link, but they were able to sort everything out. And this is going to come back into what I talked about, Joe. If that lone line is able to get more cars joining up in on it, they're going to have more speed. They're going to have more momentum as they go.
Alt and Middleton have been sticking together pretty well there. They're still on that high side, still hold the nose ahead, but now as they go through the corner, looks like the 17 of Alex Link is going to be able to just barely poke into first place. But then look at the momentum come back in favor of the top line, and they get almost a full car length ahead of that number 17, down to 7 laps to go now. Those who are around 14th, 15th, 16th, they're going to be feeling a little antsy.
Yeah, they're going to want to try to get a little bit of a move on here. We ride on board with Carr. You see him poking his nose a little bit higher there. That's the same line we saw him take coming through turn 2 on the last lap. So I think that's probably a strategic move there for the 55. Is everybody looking pretty orderly here at this point? And again, we see just little pokes up to the inside there on the high line. They're not working together nearly as much as I think they should.
But look at that. Dula and Link have jumped in front of Alt. So, but I think Link just, no, that's Dula, actually, that lost out in the number 6. And down he plummets through many positions outside of the top 5. That, is a disaster for him as he almost causes a 4-wide situation in the mid-pack.
That was very, very close there with a couple of drivers. He is going to find himself well down the order here at this point. I'm trying to find him. He's down in 16th. He is in the drop zone now, Joe. He has got to really fight to get his way back forward.
One tiny slip up, and that may put him out of this whole competition. That has got to be nerve-wracking, knowing that that can happen to just about anybody up there. So who is going to be able to avoid those sort of situations as we approach the 5 to go marker now? Final quarter of this race. Link now your leader ahead of Dylan Alt on the high side. Corrin is leading the bottom line.
A little bit of squirreliness there out of Corrin. Lucas Whitehead trying to get that perfect bump right in behind him as they now come down through 1 and 2. A little bit of a bump draft there coming through the corner. That's going to help them get momentum, but you've got to be so careful about that. You just get a couple of centimeters offline, and that's going to be enough to be able to throw a car spinning off into the dirt.
Right now, Hunter Geoghegan in the 41, I think, is the last one to advance in 13th, but underneath them, Janzik and the 23 and Meeks and the 35 have been trying to get up there. And look at that, diving to the bottom. That was Daniel Adam in the 27. Fantastic move. He gets a great run, but then he checks up, not willing to take it 3 wide quite yet. This is already looking like this is going to be nuts coming to the line.
Yeah, it certainly is, and I'm very impressed there by that run from the number 27. He could have given a big old bump draft to the cars up in front of him, but decided against it to try to keep everything together. And that's going to be a good move. And that's Daniel Adam, by the way, in 13th, fighting around for 14th right now. Dula finds himself now in that final transfer position, so everything continuing to change around here in the final 4 laps.
The 16 takes the risks and goes 3 wide with the 6 joining. Nope, he's going to abandon him down to the bottom. Tries to sneak in there and just about find space. Now remember, this is sort of open wheel rules out here. No green, white checkers. If we get a yellow, the positions are locked in. So that's why you're seeing these drivers move around so much. They cannot rest on their laurels hoping for the last lap pass.
No, they certainly can't. Up on the high line at the front of the field, that's going to be Dylan Alt giving a little bit of a bump there to Alex Link. We've got a car down off into the inside. That's the number 3 of Michael Halick. It looks like that's not going to bring out a yellow. That's just a car with some trouble.
Yeah, lapped car that's staying out of everybody's way. He knows he's out of contention unless we get a huge wreck here at the end. Corin leads in the number 21. Topside sees the 87 of Parker Collins. Whoa, the 11's going to get shaky. He wrecks and into the outside wall. There's the yellow. That's going to end it. Who is going to be able to advance through? Corin's going to take the $50. Parker Collins second. And Link is going to be third. I'm waiting for them to sort out here because we have cars still wrecking up into the tri-oval. The 6, unfortunately, involved in that and turned around. And it looks like Gio Gagan, I think, in the 13, and the 41, rather.
Yeah, he's going to be the last one to cross over the line. I got to say here, I feel so sorry for Dustin Shepard. Dustin was involved in that incident. He was that car down on the grass trying to push as hard as he could to be able to get his way up there, and he missed out by just a couple of thousandths of a second as we take a look at the replay.
I think this starts with the 11. Yeah, just gets kind of loose there. That's Dustin Shepard. But I think the 10 is what really causes it. I thought I heard him say he lost his engine.
And that just comes from pushing a little bit too hard here in the running. You can do that if it will basically explode, Joe, if you're running in too low of a gear too long. And that's exactly what we saw play out here for these drivers.
There's a number of drivers that just basically kept their foot in it as much as they could, knowing that they just have to keep the car moving on these last yellow flag laps. And as long as you can keep your position, some are actually being allowed to slot back in line. Interesting, including the number 6, if I'm seeing correctly.
Yeah, it looks like Matthew Dula is going to be able to find himself in what I think is going to be about 5th or 6th place position. Now, this is all mandated by iRacing. This is not at the discretion of any race stewards. This is all down to iRacing timing and scoring. Interesting.
I would have thought that with so many cars facing the wrong way, they would have considered them as part of the wreck and not give them the spots back, but it's a very lucky Matthew Dula who's back up into 5th, as you said. And I think the 11 of Dustin Shepard as well, managing to get out of that and get back into his position. Gio Gagan, I think, is still in 12th, and Daniel Adam in the 27 looks to be the last one to advance.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It looks like here at this point now, we don't know exactly how they are going to be switching themselves around here and how that all is, but I've got to imagine at this point that drivers have been able to sort themselves into the correct position. But yeah, I would say the big winner here out of that shakeup is going to be Matthew Dula, who looks like he will finish in 5th place position. That's the final driver to automatically advance on into the duels.
Incredible stuff. Probably saw his whole weekend flash before his eyes there for a moment as they come around out of NASCAR 4. Sad that it's going to finish under yellow for our very first of the heats tonight, but we still got plenty others that we'll be able to see if we can get a finish under green here today. And for Jordan Corin, he's going to be $50 richer in a few hundred feet. The win of heat number 1 goes to the number 21 this evening. Parker Collins takes second. Alex Link will be third.
Yeah, and obviously the driver that we were focusing on there for a good chunk of the race, Dylan Alt, the black stripe driver in the field, he's going to advance on as well. Looks like Shepard, Janzik, Meeks, Smallwood, Carr, Sabat, Gio Gagan, and Adam going to be the drivers that'll be able to make it on into those last chance qualifiers.
Unfortunately for Ryan Potter, Justin McMahon, Jason Middleton, TJ Lair, Steve Bocock, many others, it's going to be day over, weekend over, honestly, as all the drivers have found themselves from 13th on down, or from 14th on down, unable to take part in any more. Here is your finishing order. As DJ mentioned, Corin, Collins, Link, Alt, and Dula are going to advance on. Shepard, Jansnick, Meek, Smallwood, Carr, Sabat, Gio Gagan, and Adam will be able to advance to the LCQs. For Potter, McMahon, Milton, Lair, Bocock, Reeves, Miller, Justin Miller, J.R. Miller, Joe McAdory, Halick, Whitehead, Balfons Jr., Maines, Schoonover, Corlett, Morris Jr., Wind, and Jones they are done. With that, I believe we have a very brief break. We'll come back with our second heat of the evening here in just a moment on Podium Esports.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com. Racing isn't easy.
Welcome back to Daytona International Speedway for the Podium 500 2023 edition. And after the first heat, we got our taste of what we're in store for tonight, DJ. We saw 2 yellow flags, one of which ended the race. And we saw a couple drivers get extremely lucky getting their spots back as well. So knowing what we know now, I mean, what do you take from that to tell to the drivers in this second heat?
Well, Joe, one of the biggest takeaways that I'm bringing out of that first race is the power that we saw the High Line have. That really seemed to be the place to be going around this circuit. So I think a lot of drivers are going to opt to try to move themselves up on the High Line. The other thing is, though, in terms of those yellows, there's no way to predict it. There's no way to talk about it. You have just got to get lucky with the dice roll. And so I think we're not going to see a lot of change in driving style as a result of those yellows. And instead, we're going to see a lot of drivers just taking away what they can and sticking to their initial game plan.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's kind of, you have to be ready for anything in this and just go with the flow, as it looks like they are gridding up for our second heat now. So we'll be getting down there in a second and going over your starting grid. Raul Alves will be starting on the pole as Logan Hilton, who took the pole for the big show last time out in 2022. He'll start from second here in this heat. Brady Floyd will start from third as Stephen Harry will be fourth. Colin Keister, another black stripe driver, he'll start from fifth as Jason Maines will be P6. It's Alex Thurber in seventh with Clint Spillman to his outside. After that, row 5 sees Austin Green and Ross Corlett.
In 11th place, it's going to be Christopher Robinson, followed by Raja Caruth in P12. In row 7, though, it's going to be Diego Villalobos, followed by sometimes commentator Kenny Kibbe. Then it's going to be Manutza Major lining up in P15, followed by Joshua Slate in P16. Row 9, it's going to have Will Cannon and Damian Colte. And then rounding out your top 20, it'll be Brandon Ishikanian and Daniel Holloway.
John Barry starts from 21st, then it's Kyle Urbanik as Andrew Payne will begin from 23rd. James Jacobs is P24. Last one to set a time was Ralph Jones in 25th. And, Brandon Fuentes there again. Guess he didn't quite find the right one right away, unfortunately, but I'm sure he'll get there eventually. And we are getting ready to take off as 25 drivers will take part. Interesting that last time we saw a good chunk of them not take lap times, DJ. This time, everybody set a lap time.
Well, I think that's really because you saw what happened in that first heat race, that if there's a check up at the front and some of those drivers farther back in the field find themselves checked up, having to push their way forward a little bit, there's a real potential that you can lose out position and you can lose that draft off the car in front of you. And if you lose that draft, that is a death knell for your chances to advance on.
Again, if you're just joining us, the goal here in these heat races is to finish at least inside the top 13. However, if you finish inside the top 5, that means you are automatically in the feature race. 20 laps to try and do this. No green, white checkers, fixed setup, and $50 on top of it if you take a win here in this heat. So even if you're in the top 5, might be worth trying to push your luck, see if you can take home a little cash on top of it. We'll see if anybody goes for that here today. Slightly smaller field for this one as well at 25 compared to the 30 that we saw in the previous heat race. So that should take some of the pressure off, but not all of it, DJ. And I'm very curious to see if the complexion changes this time.
Yeah, I'm going to be interested as well. We saw a lot of patience in that first heat race, specifically by about the top 10 or so. And I'm going to be interested to see if drivers maybe get a little more of a giddy up here to try to push it their way forward. We will have to find out here as Ishkanian there. We ride on board with him. Nice dark room, nothing to focus on but the racing ahead of it.
Exactly, as the pace car is now in. Alves has control of the field. Heat number 2 for the Podium 500 is underway. complete. Alvis still leads the way. Carruth, though, in the 13, making some gutsy moves, taking it 3 wide on the first lap. And it did indeed pay off as he gained 5 positions and is still looking for more on that top line. Ducking down low in the 63. Helton likes the opportunity to maybe get his nose into some clean air, and it pays dividends. He finds his way forward, but he's going to need some help from the 20 here in a moment.
Yes, he is, and it looks like the number 1 there of Jason Maines falling back down through the field, caught in that middle run. As now we see Roger Carruth, I think, making contact with the outside wall. That's going to check up that high lane, and momentum shifting down to the low lane here at this point.
Not the first one. I saw at least one other driver on the first lap. I didn't catch who, but just brushed the wall through 1 and 2. So already we're seeing drivers maybe make some bigger risks here at the early stages, and it is causing the 7 all kinds of go. Austin Green dropping all the way to the back. Also a small correction, apologies. I said that the top 5 will get you into the feature. That's into the duels. So you're not there yet. So the duels will get you into the feature, but getting automatically into the duels is definitely a much better step than having to survive the last chance qualifiers. So man, they are switching lanes way more than what we saw with that first heat.
Yeah, they certainly are, as now the 23 is going to drift up a little bit. That's Colin Keister. He tries to find the fast lane here. We ride on board again with Ishkanian, as there's a little bit of a gap starting to form in front of him, but he's not going to be able to get any sort of run up to the high side. Good job to be able to just hold down low. Now he's going to have to check his momentum up there a little bit. That's a good play to make, not wanting to ram into the back of the 0-1 there. Instead, just lightly coming up behind, and now they're going to be able to make the full run up ahead.
Helton also drops. Man, all that hard work for a black stripe for Keister, and it doesn't get you any respect. He still gets hung out to dry by his fellow competitors. Finally finding an opening. The 63 winds up as far down as it looks like 17th position. That is outside of the cut. Really need to be making bigger inroads than that, but it's still early. We're only on lap 4. We'll ride on board with Helton, looking at all the cars ahead that he has to try and overtake once again.
And you see here as we ride on board just how much movement is really going on between these lines. And that's a stark contrast to what we saw in that first heat race, Joe. A lot of the drivers just were happy to stay in line. Now on the straightaways and coming through the tri-oval, we're seeing a lot of jostling back and forth. I think drivers are maybe trying to scare off some of the drivers around them a little bit, see if they can force a mistake or two out of these other drivers.
Alvis and Carruth have been working together a lot out there, and they seem to be doing a pretty good job of it, although they didn't get fully ahead, at least this time, as we watch from on board a little bit farther back with Kenny Kibbe. Gets a nice perspective. Usually we hear him commentating on short track racing, but today he's picking up the speed a little bit.
Yes, he is, and he's about to be left out to dry, as that's the number 23 of Colin Keister trying to make a move on the outside. We've got contact in the back.
Oh, it's no yellow yet, but it starts to scatter, and the 75 goes around Ralph Jones. That causes another spin for John Barry, so they didn't completely get away with it clean. Definitely a few other cars that made side-to-side contact. I'm trying to make out where exactly it started.
Well, Joe, as we take a look back at the replay here, I think this was a matter of some drivers trying to make this a little bit 3 wide, a little bit of that jockeying that we talked about that just came back to bite there. There you can see a little bit of it splaying around there in front of them, and it looks like we had a little bit of a problem there. The 63 into the 35, it looked like.
Yeah, I think that's the 34 of Colty. I mistyped there. Apologies. As, yeah, there it is right there. Just gets into the side of him, drifts up the road slightly, and as it always is with the super speedway races, it was just a chain reaction. The Major in the 82 unfortunately kind of had no place to go. He gets shoved down to the bottom, and then from there the cars behind kind of spin and scatter as they try to stay out of the action. Didn't quite get to the halfway point. Very similar to what we saw on the last heat. So seems like drivers didn't quite learn their lesson. If anything, it's gotten even more frantic.
Yeah, it certainly has, as I think drivers are really trying to push as much as possible here. Even out of some of the leaders here, like Alvis, like Caruth, like Keister, some of these drivers that we expected to be up at the front of the field, we're seeing a lot more play back and forth, a lot more moving of lines, and this is a far more dynamic race than what we saw in heat race number 1, and it just goes to show you that you never really know what's going to happen until you turn the green flag loose.
Exactly. They're all going to be their own beast out there. Also, don't forget, this year's Podium 500 is brought to you by Eric Messer Photography, the official photographer of the Madhouse, Bowman Gray Stadium. Eric is open for freelance hires for any racing organization in the Carolinas and Virginia. For more information, visit his website at e-m-photo.com. Create memories, not just photos. Right, so we're going to re-rack for Ralph Jones, John Barry, Damian Colby, Austin Green, Manatzi Major, and Josh Schlate. They've all taken spare cars with their pit stops, skip back out, and try to get in it once again. We haven't lost anybody to go a lap down, I don't believe, unless the two that are still sitting in pit lane forgot to use their spare car, because this has been a long stop for them. And that'll be a real shame if they go a lap down this early just by forgetting to tick the box of use your free repair.
Yeah, that'll be a real shame there for Major and Slate if that is the case. Both of those pit stops bordering on 55, 56 seconds here as time continues to tick along. The rest of the field, though, here just coming back around. Track temperature still nice up in the 80s, about 81 degrees Fahrenheit. The one thing that we didn't talk about last time, though, Joe, is there's about a 20-mile-an-hour wind blowing across this track, and that means that you're going to be getting a lot of buffeting here in these corners in particular, and that could account for some of the movement that we've seen from these drivers. 20 miles an hour, it's a pretty substantial wind, and these next-gen NASCARs are certainly prone to just kind of feeling that wind as they run a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that myself, so that is significant wind out there, and we'll see if it causes problems. Maybe that's where we're seeing so much more jostling as drivers are struggling to hold the lane out there, maybe, and others are taking advantage of it when they see a chance to sneak in. Looks like we are doubling up, and we'll get ready to go racing on lap 10, so exactly halfway through this race. And it's going to be Brady Floyd who will start it from the top spot in that number 20. I haven't really talked about him a whole lot as we've been kind of watching that high line, but it does seem like the low line is working a lot better this time.
Yeah, it really did, and I think that is in part because more drivers were favoring it. As we talked about in heat race number 1, the more drivers you get on a line, the more speed you're going to have throughout it. So it's not like it's going to be set in stone that the high line is going to be the fastest way around here. If just kind of by happenstance and by communication, you get more drivers up on the high lane's going to run faster. If you get more drivers down on the low lane's going to go faster. So it really just all depends, and it comes down to the drivers to be able to read the track and read the other cars around you to figure out how to best get your way forward.
So myself and DJ Clark going to cover the rest of this heat, and then we got 3 more after this. $50 to each of the winners. Can Brady Floyd keep it at the point here for the remaining half of this race and take that cash home and automatically put himself into the twin race, the duels, as they get ready to be released by the pace car? There we go. Floyd has control of the field, and there we go. Green flag is out, and it's another big jump. Will he try and get to the top side ahead of the 77 of Alex Thurber? That's a big no. He's going to hold the bottom.
He's going to hold the bottom here. Little bit of movement from behind, little bit. Ooh, that's the 63 getting pushed up 3 wide with the 83 down to the middle, and we've got another big crash going on in the back.
And there's the yellow. I was going to say no yellow quite yet. Clint Spillman was the first I saw that got turned around in the 88. And it wasn't quite him. Looks like it was Ralph Jones in the 75. Watch him. There he is in the orange machine. And from there, everybody else just kind of having to pick up the pieces. It was a great job by Damian Colty, who avoided all those wrecks just by getting out of the throttle. And I think that'll get him a couple spots on top of it as he tries to collect the back of the field. Yellows breed yellows often in racing. Even when it's only a 20-lap race, it can sometimes get slowed down in a bog when drivers get a little too anxious around each other. So there you saw what caused this latest one. And there's not much of a change in what little bit of racing we did have. Floyd is still leading. Now it's Robertson who's going to be restarting in second. But otherwise, we'll just have to re-rack and restack again.
Yeah, and for these drivers, Joe, this is part and parcel for super speedway racing, just having yellow after yellow, but it can be a very, very hard thing to get yourself back into the mindset to really try to push your way along here and get yourself ready for a restart. It requires a lot of concentration, and particularly in these next-gen NASCAR machines, you don't actually want to get a huge jump on the field around you. You want to go in time with everybody else. And so that makes things a little bit more difficult for all of these drivers. They've really and truly just got to be able to keep themselves together and make sure they know when everybody else is going to be going to be able to get the good jump on the field.
By the way, we got a big oops if you're Ralph Jones. He already used his free repair in that first stop. He was involved in the first wreck in some form or fashion. Now that he's been involved in the second one, if you look at the driver's right-hand side of the car, there's a big bump in it. It's going to be some significant aero damage, I imagine, hurting his top-line speed. We'll see how badly, but he won't be the one, won't want to be the one to try and lead any packs for now.
No, he won't be, and he's going to be hoping here that the aero wash over the rest of the car is going to be able to keep him pulled along, but he's going to have to be able to keep an eye on that. Remember, these next gens, a little bit more aero sensitive than their previous Gen 6 counterparts, and so that does mean things are going to get a little bit more difficult for him to control. I wouldn't unfortunately be surprised if we see that number 75 machine starting to fall back down through the field a little bit more once we get back to green flag conditions.
They're waiting to give the one to go signal here so that they can get too wide and they'll be back out once again. There's a couple drivers that seemed involved, or not sure if they just went in for the heck of it or not, but I did see John Barry and Clint Spillman come in. I think they had already taken their spare cars before, so maybe just banging away on the vehicles a little bit to try and get them back into shape. But regardless, they're out on the track. Somebody riding the apron as though they're saving fuel in this short race. I'm not entirely sure why. And that's going to be Raja Karuth down there, the truck racer, who is still up in 6th, but currently just outside of the automatically advancing positions.
Yeah, just going to be moving his way around. He's coming down in... Oh, no, he's not coming down into pit lane. I just got that notification and got very confused. He was able to bring his way out there, so not entirely sure why he'd be riding down on the apron, Joe. Remember, it's a fixed setup league here, so it's not like he could be, trying to short fuel the car to get an advantage or something. Maybe just a little bit of mind games that he's throwing on the rest of the field.
Relaxing his bones, I suppose, as he lets it cruise there on the bottom. And now we get the one to go signal, so let's get going racing once again. And there's going to be precious few laps left. It's only going to be lap 14 once we get the green flag. So we'll see 7 laps to finish in this event. If we get another immediate caution, that won't end the race, but it will make you probably kind of nervous if you're at the back of the field, because you have to make a lot of passes, and very shortly, if the trend of yellows continues and gives you less chance of green flag racing. Can't pass anybody, DJ, if you're all just pacing behind the pace car.
No, you certainly cannot, and so I think we're going to see a little bit more aggression out of these drivers, more than we've even seen at the beginning of the race, to try to push their way up forward, particularly looking back here at the likes of Holloway, Ishkanian, Payne, Jacobs, Green, Major. Those drivers that are in the drop zones, they're going to be wanting to move their way up into the top 13 and get their way on into the last chance qualifiers.
So Floyd still holding the top position. Villalobos is the last one to automatically advance to the duels in that 5th spot if things stay as they are. Waiting for the pace car to release Brady. There it goes. Brady has to wait for the restart zone. They're into it now, and the green flag is out. It's almost immediate as he accelerates away. Robertson to his outside with a tremendous run, and in fact, the cars behind them are giving a giant push, and they're getting multiple car lengths ahead.
Yeah, they're really starting to get a good lineup on the high line. Whoa! Big move to the inside there for the number 1 machine, and that's going to be a big checkup. We've already got another yellow.
Oh, boy. Like I said, it's going to get really nervous for those at the very back, and somebody got turned once again. Let's see who that is. I think that might be Stephen Harry in the 69. Yep, there he is.
And Joe, that was really all precipitated by that move by Jason Maines. You saw him very, very aggressively, very almost violently move into that middle lane, try to make up some positions. Watch that yellow car, and then you can see the sort of stack up that exists as a result of it. Everybody just sort of checks themselves up, and then pop, peep, pow, there you see the domino effect taking place.
So as he drifts down to the bottom, we're going to take one more look at it. This is from on board John Barry now, who's already had to have a couple of goes at repairing the car, and have to bring it back in with the crew who's probably wondering, what in the world are you doing out there? Oh, man, yeah, just not much he could do in that situation. Maybe could have tried to go all the way to the apron, but even lightning fast reflexes probably wouldn't have done much.
Yeah, if you get that aggressive on the steering, that much trying to push your way by, you're going to run into problems, and especially running at the run there, when you come down onto the apron, the car can very violently lose control. So I think he was just in a tough position there no matter what happened in that 74.
Absolutely. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so if we do get restarted, it's going to be 2 or 3 laps to go, I'm pretty sure. It's going to be very short for them to do anything. And let's see. Harry's come into pit lane to get his repairs. Others just staying out. Kind of don't blame them at this point. I mean, really, the speed's not going to get all that high if it is 2 laps, DJ. So maybe the thought process here, as it looks like Major and Barry will take repairs. But I mean, at this point, I guess the thought process is maybe just stay out, take as many positions as you can, hope for another yellow, and hope that somehow you get shuffled into those top 13.
Yeah, I think for drivers that are farther down in the order, they're hoping for another big one to take place here, and that it's going to take out a big chunk of the field running from about 6th place down to about 15th, and they'll be able to move their way on by. I get that strategy, but if you're running in the back, we just talked about the lightning reflexes that you've got to have to try to maneuver around some of these incidents. It's a very risky proposition to be able to do, and it's not a guarantee that you'll be able to move your way forward.
And a reminder to our audience that didn't catch it earlier on, there's no green-white checkers in these heat races. So if we do get another yellow on this last restart, that's it. Race is over. The positions are locked in. However, one of the quirks of iRacing is we get sort of an old-school NASCAR finish if we get a yellow on the white flag lap. Once the white flag is out, another flag cannot be thrown by the sim. And it is a literal race to the line. Whoever gets there first, no matter how many wrecks happen.
Yeah, and so that's going to be a big thing to come into play as they go. If we do see that yellow, or what would be a yellow come out, we could see a big incident take place, and that could throw everything out for a loop. We could see some drivers really trying to charge their way up through the field, getting involved into an incident or two, and that really could throw things around. But we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, Joe. We've got to get to that final lap before we even get talking about that.
Absolutely. Now, did we get the lights out this time? Yes, looks like lights are out. We're going to get restarted once more, and it will indeed be only a 3-lap shootout. But will we be able to actually finish that shootout? Because this split has been just a little bit messy compared to our first heat. And we've only had maybe, I think it was something like 7 laps of green flag racing. I guess maybe you could count 8 if you count the quarter of a lap that we've gotten on each of the restarts.
Yeah, something like that. But Joe, that's just really down to a little bit of bad luck, I think, for these drivers. We've seen aggressive moves out of them, but that's just the drivers that are in the field. They're trying to be aggressive. They're trying to fight their way forward. And sometimes you're going to have these stack ups of yellows, even with such a stacked field such as this.
Okay, so as we reset, make a big deal about all these black stripe drivers. Well, Colin Keister sits in ninth right now, so he's not going to be automatically through. He's going to want to make up a few spots, no doubt, but he is in a relatively safe position if he can keep from being passed in these last couple laps. They exit off of turn 4 and get ready for what will be the final restart of the heat. Robertson has control of the field now that the pace car is away. The blue and red machine looks for the go, and there it is. Green flag is out. Can we finish under green, or is this going to be a repeat of the last couple restarts we've witnessed? Once again, 3 wide quite quickly. Nobody's waiting around.
No, and that's Keister leading the charge, putting the 77 there of Alex Thurber down a little bit. Keister's going to start to move his way forward. This is very, very hairy stuff up at the front of the field.
And there's the caution. That's going to end it. I can't even tell what caused this one. Stephen Harry, the 69. Oh, no. Well, this is not going to go over very well. Harry was at the very tail end of the fields. And did he cause I think he caused a DQ. Yep, there it goes. Yep. That was major.
Yeah, just miscommunication there between the 82 and the 69 as they came to the line, or as they came through the corner, rather, and that is not going to be great, I think, for some of these drivers. And I think the driver that's going to be most upset about that is Colin Keister, who looks like he's going to finish in 6th place, 1 spot out of that automatically advancing into the duels.
A little bit of behind the curtain. We had theorized before this started that 17 incidents is a lot for a 20-lap race for anybody to get DQ'd. It only took us until Heat 2 to see the first person fall victim to that. That does not bode well, but, I guess it's a warning shot for everybody else that you got to stay out of trouble out there, because you can actually rack up enough in that short amount of time. But for our drivers continuing on, they're going to take the white flag, and let's see, who's the lucky driver in 13th? Alex Thurber is the last amongst them. And how about a nod to Austin Green in the 7? Managed to actually come in, take a pit stop, and he didn't take his spare car, interestingly, in that. But he's managed to make it through despite having to see his pit crew at some point.
Yeah, and that just goes to show you never count out anybody in these races. You're going to be able to catch your way back up if you just got a little bit of stick-to-itiveness, if you're going to be able to get your way forward. And that's all you need to have happen sometimes, is just have a little bit of luck fall your way, and you can move on into the LCQs.
Absolutely. Kenny Kibbe, though, hey, our good old boy's going to manage to get automatically through into the duel, so that'll make him particularly happy, I am sure. And we'll see how he fares once we get to there. But for about 10 drivers or so, unfortunately, about 12 drivers, I believe, this is the end of the road in a lap's time. Or if you're major, it is already over, and you've had to leave the racetrack with the DQ flag hanging over your head, unfortunately. But Robertson going to get $50 to take home, so that'll make him pretty pleased. Curious what these guys will be spending that on once they get that cash in their pocket.
I don't know. I've got to imagine maybe for some of them it'll be some new sim racing gear. For others, it may just be a good night out. Maybe we'll see a couple of drivers having a nice Valentine's Day meal as a result of their winnings here today.
Indeed. And, honestly, I was thinking about it, that before we came live and I was looking at the winnings available here, you think about that 1K plus for the overall winner. All you need is maybe a couple of races that are $300, $400, $500 prize packages, over the course of a month, you actually could make a living off of this. Now, granted, going to be pretty difficult. You have to be quite fast to do that anyways, but that seems like a pretty good proposition to me, to maybe take less hours at the office and more in your sim rig, as that's what Robertson's about to do. $50 and a heat win for the number 99 as they come across the line for the second time tonight, under yellow, unfortunately, but Heat 2 is now done.
Yeah, and a good job for a lot of those leaders. I mean, look at Robertson Carruth up 10 positions there. And I've got to really credit Raja Carruth. Really and truly aggressive moves at the start to get himself into position to try to push himself forward. That, to me, is the two drives of the race.
Urbanic as well finished 14 positions up and in the advancing spot. So well done to him. But we're watching the 99 get ready to celebrate for his victory. And I think, let's see, do we want to do results, or are we going to hold off on that to give some screen time to this guy since he didn't really get to race a whole bunch on air? Getting info from behind the scenes, but the Hot Wheels liveried car comes out to the tri-oval to burn it down here in front of the adoring virtual crowd. Just out to the start-finish line, halts it, and does he light it up? No, he's just going to pose. There we go. Now he's on a little bit of a false start. There we go. No. Well, it's not the most spectacular celebration that I've seen yet. Now he's able to get it going as finally some sort of half-moon crescents get made on the front stretch. So our finishing order sees Robertson advance, Carruth in second, behind him Maines in P3, and Alvis in fourth. Kenny Kibbe, the last to automatically go into the duels. Colin Keister will finish sixth, but gets into the last chance qualifier. Brady Floyd seventh, and Kyle Urbanic eighth. After that, Daniel Holloway will be in ninth, and the top 10 rounded out by Diego Villalobos. Austin Green, Andrew Payne, and Alex Thurber, DJ, are the last that make it to the LCQ.
And then we get into the drivers that are going to have an early weekend here, unfortunately. Ishkanian, Cannon, Helton, Corlett, Jacobs, Spillman, and Jones. They are rounding out your top 20. It was John Barry, Joshua Slate, Damian Colte, Munatsi Major, and Stephen Harry, who all did not make it on, and they will be going home.
But we're not going home yet. We got three more races. Eventually I'm going to get this. It's the Podium 500 here, the 2023 edition. Stick around because there's more to come.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Welcome back to Daytona International Speedway. We're getting ready for Heat 3 of the Podium 500. I'm Joe Peak here with DJ Clark. And we had two very different heats for the first two. The first one wasn't too bad. Saw two cautions, even though it did end under yellow. It had some very good racing. The second one absolutely plagued with yellows, DJ. And in fact, we didn't really go racing for a full green flag lap except for the first 6 or 7.
Yeah, it's really a tale of the two Daytonas here, and that's unfortunately what can happen around this big 2.5-mile super speedway. You can see some good, clean racing when everybody sort of behaves themselves, but in the short heat racing formats like we have here tonight, only 20 laps out on track. It's not altogether unsurprising that these drivers are pushing and shoving and doing everything they can do to try to get their way forward. It's going to be a flip of the coin, frankly, Joe, going forward in these final 3 heat races, which kind of race we're going to see.
Yeah, I'd love to see how this is going to wind up, but they actually just finished the qualifying, so why don't we head down to the grid for our third heat of the evening. Just 2 more after this one, with Cody Niegels taking the pole position, and Zach Lima is going to be starting from second. Ray Rittenauer is going to be in P3. Then it's Justin Knobloch in the 4th position, followed by Josh Ball in 5th. David Robertson, P6 for him, has Kyle Trudell. Then next, DJ Stagner will be in the 8th position, and Ray Rogers starts on the inside of row 5 with Derek Edgerton rounding out your top 10.
In 11th place, it's going to be Dylan Jones, followed by Adam Martin. Then in row 7 behind them, it's Brett Baldick and Maximilian Heilig. Row 8 is going to feature Ford Martin and Tanner Sims, with 17th place being Denver Turgeson and Brandon Wynn in 18th. Rounding out your top 20, though, it'll be Christopher Blanchard and Ron Morris.
Danny Eschleman in 21st, then sees Lane Holzler in 22nd. Jordy Lopez Jr. will be P23. There's another one of our black stripes here, as Jason Dinsmore starts 24th, and Bobby Blazer, the last one to set a time, in 25th. The remaining drivers that you see are not going to be taking part in this heat. They, again, signed up erroneously, so you will see them later on this evening. But we get ready for the pace lap, and already the pace car is taking off. So, which type are we going to see out there? Not much of a change in the temperatures. It's still 80 Fahrenheit on the track, and still 20 miles per hour wind blowing around, kind of buffeting these cars. But it's been sunny for much of it, just a little bit of cloud cover throughout. And right now, at least in this heat, it's going to be very bright out.
Yeah, going to be very bright indeed, with it being just about afternoon virtual standard time. Looks about like 12:07 here at this point. But the track temperature, Joe, has continued to fall over the course of these heat races. So I think that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. If it starts to get down into the 70s, that may be something to worry about for these drivers. They're going to have to be able to get a little bit more heat into the tires to make sure they're ready to go by the time they dive into turn 1.
They'll come down the backstretch, what will hopefully be the last time under pace speed until we get to the end of this race. And hopefully we will stay more green than what we witnessed before. But 25 drivers competing once again, not quite as big as what we saw in the very first one, but about the same as the last one, which means the chances are more in your favor, frankly, but I wouldn't count on this just being by chance. You're going to have to put yourself in a good position by the time we get to the final laps of this race, and hope that we don't finish under yellow again if you are outside of those advancing positions. Pace car is in. Eagles has control, and the green flag is out. Through the tri-oval, we start heat number 3 for tonight. One is over with the Eagles leading the way. Rittenauer been giving them a big push for much of it. And we see the return of the High Line showing its dominance out here, at least in the early stages of Heat 3 at the bottom. It is Josh Ball in the 22 taking Kyle Trudell with him. And now we start to get a fight of dominance for the front two rows.
Yes, we do, and we've seen a little bit of jostling around there in the back, Joe. A couple of drivers, in particular Ford Martin, trying to make this 3 wide, and it looks like they're going to try to continue to do that. They've got to be a little bit careful about that, as it could pinch up here mid-corner, but it looks like Ford is absolutely committed to running that inner line.
Halleck in the 12, unfortunately, in the wall, just brushing all along the safety barrier, and unfortunately that's going to put him out of touch of everybody else. We also have Jason Dinsmore at the back. I'm not sure how he lost the main group here, but this is very, very early. He did not start from pit lanes. We'll have to investigate that. A few cars have been trying to split the middle there, including the number 24. We get a car off, and this is causing another chain reaction. There is the yellow. Looks like a bunch are going to be able to squeak by, but 2 are not so lucky. Ford Martin and Bobby Blazer wind up at the side of the circuit.
Yeah, and that's that middle lane that I was talking about, Joe. I really think the way to go here in these races is run 2 wide for as long as possible. There we saw a little bit of contact there with the outside wall. We're going to focus here. That's the 07. That's Ford Martin that you kind of keep your eye on. Just tries to move down, makes contact there with another car that's going to spin him down to the inside, and Ford just pipped around there going down the back straightaway.
I don't know if we have an onboard view that sees the wheel of these drivers, but the 25 of Tergesen had a very wild ride. Not only saved it, but had a scary escape. Here we go with the helmet cam. Watch the hands, because things are about to get crazy.
Yeah, things are going to get very, very crazy here. Let's watch it. Watch those hands. You see him just counter steer in it, able to get it around. A little bit of brake, little bit of throttle, and a car spinning on by him. That man's going to need a change of pants.
Who needs coffee when you got that? I mean, my goodness. He escaped it all. That was a lot less busy inside the cockpit than I thought it was going to be. I figured he would be just seesawing that thing around, but a cool head inside that 25 car, and he's still in this race. If he didn't get touched too hard in that initial contact, then I think he probably got away without any damage at all, and he can hopefully take part in the rest of this without having to use up that free repair. So other cars not so lucky, unfortunately, and we'll re-rack once again, and unfortunately only got just a little bit of green flag racing before we slow down once again.
Yeah, and we saw a lot of that aggression out of these drivers. We saw a lot of jockeying for position, trying to make that third lane work in the middle, and that's going to be a little bit scary for me, Joe. I think drivers are going to have to watch out for that, make sure they don't get too aggressive. I think the strategy here is just stick in those 2 wide formations, let it run, and then the last 5 laps of the race, that's when it's time to get your elbows out.
Sims, Martin, and Blazer have all come in and are taking repairs, but only Sims took his fast repairs, so the others are going to try and bang away at the car and hold on to those until late in the day. Probably not a bad idea based on what we've been witnessing so far. If they get involved in multiple ones, then could be very wise to try and cling to the back of it. But while we've got a chance to slow down, we do want to give you a quick reminder that this year's Podium 500 is brought to you by Eric Messer Photography, the official photographer of the Madhouse Bowman Gray Stadium. Eric is open for freelance hires for any racing organization in the Carolinas and Virginia. For more information, visit his website at e-m-photo.com. Create memories, not just photos. All right, so we'll give it a second because we got to get cars back out with the pits closed and get them side by side before we start again. I believe this is the earliest yellow that we've seen so far yet, but it was still a lap or 2 into the race at least, and drivers were starting to get underway. But you could see the urgency in the back of the pack, I felt like, in this one, DJ. The drivers like the 24 that kept trying to make it 3 wide very early just to see if he can get himself some positions.
Yeah, you're seeing a lot of those drivers trying to push themselves up forward. That's a lot of the desperation. I think they probably saw that second heat race from the racing here, and they got a little bit worried about it. They had to push their way back up forward, and they said, if these yellows are going to keep coming, I've got to try to make my way up forward as quickly as possible. And unfortunately, that kind of movement is going to be exactly the thing that's going to breed another caution. Now, let's hope, knock on all the wood that you have, knock on your patented Podium Esports block of wood that we keep next to our computers, and that will certainly go by the wayside, and we'll be able to stay back in green.
You have a lot of patented blocks of wood next to your computer, I must say, over the years.
I have stickers on the block of wood from all of the companies.
I know. I figured I'd tease you about that. I like to imagine you switch them out every single one. There's a different block of wood for each company that you broadcast for.
It's just I have a stack of 2x4s next to my computer.
All right, we're going to get going once again, and Niegels and Rittenauer are going to be leading the way at the top spots. Will they start to group up? Or will one of them try and leap ahead and maybe get in line in front of the other here? Because we've been seeing some interesting tactics up at the top. At times, we've been seeing two drivers really hook up and kind of move to the other lane. Will they be able to do likewise in this one? Pace car getting ready to take off. There it goes. Niegels has control of the field once again. He's in the start zone. And he waits a little bit on this one, but the green flag is out, and he is off. Bit of a jump, actually, over both of them. He stays low. Now he ducks up high, and he throws his hand in with the number 4 machine.
And let's see how that's going to play itself out here. We got about 4 cars in a good line right now. Little bit of movement down on that low side. I see the 44 there. That's Brett Baldick, as we've got another yellow.
Not sure. Is it? Oh, it's Jason Dinsmore there. And the green and white comes to a halt. Oh, he was blinking a lot. I don't even know if we'll be able to get much of a replay of this. He disappeared for a long time, and unfortunately, I think it may have been Bobby Blazer again. It was either that or Martin that got a piece of him. They both got away from it, though.
I saw Martin spinning a little bit, so I think that that number 07 may have had a little bit to do with it there. There you can see forward down to the inside.
Yeah, he had a secondary incident, and it was Bobby Blazer that touched him the second time. Yeah, there's where the car reappears. He's just trying to hold back onto it. Probably in the chaos, did not hear car low, and thankfully did not cause a major wreck. He was able to point it back forward pretty quickly. But, man, that happened very fast. And once again, at the back of the field, which is what we saw end the race last time in heat number 2. 2 cars at the very tail end coming together. That's never a popular occurrence when the yellows come from cars vying for the final spots.
Yeah, everybody trying to just fight for positions there, and those internet blinkage can be so difficult to try to fight with and to try to get around. I really feel for Ford there. Almost nothing he could have done.
Yeah, so I wonder if, well, did Dinsmore hit much of anything, actually? Because I wondered if he even needs to come into pit lane from that. Let me go back and check that replay on my own real quick to see if he needs to come in for repairs. Might not even get to see his car hit the wall. Yeah, I think he managed to avoid everything from what I can tell, just spun to the bottom of the track. But he is going to come into pit lane anyways. You can see him there in the background taking the 62 to his pit stall. And hopefully while he's there, he can maybe try and bang on the router a little bit and get it to behave for the time being so that we don't have more issues like that. Otherwise, it's going to be a long race of trying to deal with cautions caused by a heavily blinking car. So Lima is now your leader in the number 13. Niegels actually is slotted down into second, and Josh Ball up into the 3rd position. But there hasn't been too much movement throughout the field. Most everybody's close to where they began, except for Jordi Lopez. No surprise that the black stripe driver has managed to make up 11 spots in what scant running we have had.
Yeah, not a lot of drivers moving, but as you said, Jordi Lopez doing a good job as they continue to go. It's going to be a good run here for him, I think. Jordi, the one that I'm going to keep my eyes on, up into 12th, as you said, but that certainly is a good run, and being up into 12th, that means he's going to move on into the LCQs if he stays there.
I always find it interesting that in these super speedway races, because, you know, we often talk about it's a bit of a crapshoot. It can be a little random, especially when it's a fixed setup like this and everybody has to be on equal footing. And yet, these pro licensed drivers somehow managed to find their way forward. So for everybody that thinks this is a roll of the dice, there's definitely some skill to it, and we're seeing that really play itself out.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's not just flooring the car and turning left, Joe. There is so much that you have got to be able to do as you run. You really and truly have to be feathering the throttle, knowing when to give that bump draft to the car in front of you, knowing when to respond to a car that checks up, knowing how to not check up the field behind you, keep the gaps nice and easy together. There is just so much that comes into play.
All right, let's cross our fingers, restarting on lap 11, that we can get a little bit of a cleaner second half of this heat. It's halfway through this evening with this one, and looking for a little bit of racing, as this one has also been plagued by it, much like Heat 2, but we're still early on, so it could turn around, and let's hope that the racing gods are smiling on these drivers to give us some entertainment this evening as we come down the super stretch here at Daytona. A couple years ago, of course, the stands were taken down, which still feels strange to me. I don't know, it just feels empty compared to so many years used to seeing those massive grandstands all along the backstretch. I don't know, felt like it took some of the presence away from it.
Yeah, it gives it a little bit more of a wide open feel to it, and it doesn't feel, frankly, nearly as confining as it used to be. It used to feel like you were absolutely racing in a massive coliseum, and just a little bit of a different run here for it. But it hasn't diminished anyway from the racing out on track, as it still continues to be nothing short of electric.
Indeed. It carries on that history that it's built up from pretty much day one. Very first Daytona 500 saw it come down to a photo finish, we have to remember, and there's been plenty since then. Here we go. Pace car is in, and the green flag is out. Lima has control of the fields, and they start to accelerate away, but that bottom line has a bit of a checkup. Thankfully, everybody is very heads up, and then look at Zach jump up to the top side. I'm starting to notice a trend there.
Yeah, I am as well. Looks like the number 11 there. That's Dylan Jones caught in the middle. We've got a car spinning around. That's the number 2. Let's hope he can keep it and get it pointed back the right way.
No cars coming up on him. It stays green. That's bad news if you're Tanner Sims. Good news for everybody else that wants to get this show on the road. Lima still up at the point down on the bottom. It looks like the 22 of Josh Ball leading the low line. He's going to get a little bit of a nose ahead of Niegels as he
more
gets
contact.
Nice push, and yep, the 11's into the wall.
Oh, but they're going to keep pointed the right way, and somehow with all of that damage, we stay green, Joe.
He just got hit by a second car, and then a third hit happened as Denver Lee Turgeson got hit by Dinsmore. Still no yellow, though, in all of that. The chaos has taken a bite out of the field, but we stay green.
We do indeed stay green here at this point, as right now looks like up on the high side. That line continues to run well. Lima leading Niegels right now as they go, but a little bit of a hookup there from behind. That's the 22 and the 20. That's Josh Ball and David Robertson starting to get a little momentum down on the low line.
So the drivers now find themselves coming around to complete lap 12. We're finally looking like we're getting up to speed. 8 left as the 3 tries to take it 3 wide and has to brush the wall a little bit there to try and survive. Jordi Lopez Jr. continuing to take some risks, but he's got to if he wants to automatically advance into the duels. He's still only at 10th.
Yeah, he's got to try to move forward, and now Jordy's going to be doing exactly that. Looking to the high side there on the 23, trying to make a little bit of a run here. He's going to be able to tuck in behind right now, and it looks like that move actually worked out pretty perfectly.
Ray Rogers is the one that goes to the back, and actually this front group is 13 people large. So if they stay green, they're all good. And I doubt they're going to be caught up by the group behind because it's all of 3 cars in Stagner, Adam Martin, and Christopher Blanchard. So this is sort of ideal. It all depends on if you don't want to risk yourself having to go through the LCQ, I suppose.
Yeah, it's as they go right now, and here we ride on board with Brett Baldick trying to see what he has got as he works his way up on the high line, currently running in 10th place right now. You can see those couple of cars starting to stretch out in the front. That's the number 3 in front of him there of Jordi Lopez. Jordi looking very, very aggressive, poking his nose this way and that.
Big shove on the low side there. Almost a 3-car tandem that they made work there with the 7 pushing the 20, pushing the 22. That's Ball, who takes a big lead. And, oh, he's going to be abandoned immediately. Robertson says, goodbye. I helped you all I wanted to. Now I'm going to get help from that top line.
Yeah, there they go. And now as they run, that's going to be Lane Hosler that you see down on the inside. That's a little bit of lap traffic. He does the right thing, gets out of the way, but they try to be able to work their way out right now. Coming down to the low side here at this point, trying to see if anybody can get that good hookup. That's the 7 and the 22 trying to play nice and trying to push their way forward.
Absolutely, and still we have those 13 cars together. Nobody else has dropped off of them. They're not being caught for sure by that group behind. The lanes are getting a little bit sketchy there. Big jump up to the top side for the 22. Oh, and he's going to hook someone, and the 3 gets a big piece of it. In fact, nearly everyone in that front group except for 3 cars becomes involved.
Oh, and that had disaster written all over it in about 18 different languages, Joe. That was very, very close with everybody swapping lanes back and forward. It was frankly only about a matter of time before you saw that kind of thing start to happen.
That was Ball and Rittenauer with the start of it. Ball's going to give a very bad push, frankly. Yeah, very corner of the car, and he goes into him, runs him into the 3 of Lopez Jr., and then, unfortunately, it was just kind of a mess that nobody could avoid behind them. So only the top 3, which is Zach Lima, Cody Niegels, and David Robertson, got away scot-free.
Yeah, they're able to get through it. They're going to be happy about it, but I'm going to be interested to see here, Joe, just how many of these drivers have enough damage and have enough that they're going to need to come down into pit lane. We ride on board with Brett Baldick, and you can just see what happens when you're super speedway racing. Sometimes there is absolutely nowhere to go.
Oh, did he avoid that last one, or did he get a piece of it?
I think he got a piece of it.
Oh, he was so close. Yep, there's the damage on it. Man, he was right on the edge of being able to squeak through with just some tiny bumps that wouldn't have done anything, and that last one just really gave him a big crinkle on the front of the car. He should be able to come in for a spare, but we're not going to get restarted until I think about 3 to go here.
Yeah, it's going to be a real sprint to the finish here for these drivers. I think they're really going to have to push their way ahead as much as possible. We've now cycled everything around. It looks like Ray Rogers and Brandon Wind are going to be the 2 drivers that really have benefited from this most, including also Ron Morris, who is up 14 on the day, just outside of that automatic dual advancement zone.
Yeah, once Brandon found the heat that he was supposed to be in, he's doing pretty good now. A little bit of luck helping him along the way, but sometimes that's what you need in super speedway racing to put yourself in the spot you need to be. Lopez looks like he's taking that spare car right now and getting back out of it. We've officially lost Tanner Sims, sadly, but 24 cars are still on track to attempt to win the $50 here today, and a chance at getting into the LCQ as well as the duels here in the Podium 500 heat races. But at least we got a little bit more racing in on this one, and definitely had an interesting dynamic to it. As we avoided multiple cautions, DJ, but eventually they found us. It just was interesting the way that they were racing there.
Yeah, again, very aggressive, very jittery, I think, is the way to describe it, Joe. Seeing a lot of these drivers jumping back and forth on lines, trying to see what they are able to do and trying to find their way forward. There's a lot of nerves here in these last 2 heat races. That's really the vibe that I'm getting.
So this is going to be 3 to go, which means it's actually going to be a natural green-white checkers here. I think as long as they get stacked up behind the pace car. Yeah, lights are out, so 2-lap shootout to the end. If they can make 1 lap under green, we'll finally get our first green flag finish here, no matter what happens from that. This has certainly been another interesting one between the first 2 that we had, and now another one that's had its own fair share of cautions, but has at least gotten a little bit more of the green flag racing in between the yellow slowdowns that we've had. So will all 24 make it to that checkered flag, or we're going to get a few more DNFs and a few more wrecks along the way?
Yeah, we'll have to see what can happen here. Again, going to be a very, very quick sprint to the finish. We're going to have to see what they're able to do. As frankly, as we've just been reminded here by some of our workers behind the scenes, Joe, we pretty much have a green-white checker right now.
Absolutely. So even though they aren't officially in the rules, it's got its own version here, which is certainly going to be fun to witness. And Robertson's already kind of getting himself ready to go, it seems, as everybody else is going to have to catch up there. You're not allowed to try and back off the leader to game the system. So now they start to approach up on the outside. Zach Lima is going to be pairing up with that number 20 once we get that green flag. Here we go. The iRacing pace car sedan gets ready to release the fields. Given a long time. There he goes. Now we're ready to go. Have to wait for the restart zone. And he's on it early. The 20 accelerates away and the green flag is out. Will we get another car jumping to the high side now that he is clear of the second place driver? No, he's going to stick with it this time.
Now, I wonder how long he is, though, as there we see the 9 starting to think about moving up onto that high lane, as now the 41 there of Brandon Wynn is going to be able to take that position. We've got a couple of cars trying to jockey for position. It looks like the 76 there, Ron Morris, losing positions out in no man's land.
No place to go. A couple friends start to pair up with him, but they just get shuffled back as well. So high or low is where you want to be, not the middle of the road. And ooh, the 11 gets bumped into the outside. We got a couple cars wrecking in the back. And there's the yellow. That's going to end it. Who gets our 13th position? It's going to be tight in this top group as to where iRacing sorts them out. But we'll get the white flag for 1 to go.
Yeah, and we're going to wait to make that call until we get the official order here determined by iRacing, because that was going to be the way that we will decide this. Right now, I can't tell you exactly who it is. We're still waiting for everybody to sort themselves out, so let's go ahead and take a look at the replay here and see exactly what happened, Joe.
I think the 11 was up in the wall, and then it just kind of unfortunately happened around him. Yeah, somebody got bumped down. And things happened so fast that those that were behind them, whoa, squeaking by. Was that, trying to figure out who that was, and the green and white that's just managed to barely get through. Poor Jordy Lopez, unfortunately, definitely got a big chunk of it, so he is out of this weekend's running with that one. He'll only see the car finish, I think, around 24th place because of that. And as they come back to the line, I think they have now sorted themselves. Derek Edgerton is the last lucky boy of this group. And then Cody Niegels actually got shuffled all the way back to 5th after leading a bunch of this, but somehow did wind up within the top 5, able to advance into the duels. But the man that gets the $50, it took him a while to find where he's supposed to be, but the 41 of Brandon Wynn is going to take the win here in heat number 3.
Yes, he will. He will certainly be able to take that $50. That'll be a good run there for him. Cody Niegels is going to have to settle back for 5th, but not too much settling. He'll advance automatically into the duels, and it looks like Ford Martin going to be the one who advances on the last one to advance on into the LCQs.
Here's a wild stat for you. 2 of our top 5 that will automatically go to the duels came up 17 positions to finish where they did today. So again, qualifying even in only a 20-lap race here at Daytona isn't always critical if you play your cards right.
Exactly. So much of running here at Daytona is really and truly about strategy and where you want to position your car and how you want it to be running. That is what you've got to do, and that is how you see these drivers being able to take their runs to the end.
Well, the ESP car driver used his mind powers a little bit to figure it out. Let's see if he can figure out the donuts better than our last winner in the previous heats. There we go. Oh, he's gonna do a burnout instead, and then maybe bring it into some donuts. But some good celebrations that are now going to take us to another quick break after the results here, as Brandon Wind takes the win with Josh Ball in second and David Robertson in the third position. Danny Eschleman will finish fourth, followed by Cody Nichols. The last two automatically advance to the duel. Zachary Lima, unfortunately, who was in the lead there on that restart, somehow wound up in sixth, but at least will get to try again in the last chance qualifier. Justin Knobloch will be seventh and Ray Rogers eighth. And it's Adam Martin in ninth and Brett Baldeck 10th. Christopher Blanchard, DJ Stagner, and Derek Edgerton, the last ones to have more racing to do. DJ, the rest are done.
Yes, they are. Starting off with Derek Edgerton, Ron Morris, Dylan Jones, Bobby Blazer, Kyle Trudell, Jason Dinsmore, and Lane is in Rittenauer there, as we've got a little bit of a confusion on my standings there. Then Lopez, Dinsmore, Hosler, Turgeson, Sims, Justice, Levine, and some of those drivers, the DNS there, did not get to the end. But Joe, that officially does mean we are halfway through our heat races here. We've got two more coming up.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series in officially licensed cars engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Welcome back to Podium Esports coverage of the Podium 500 here at Daytona International Speedway. We're into heat number 4, and I'm here with DJ Clark. I'm Joe Peak, been covering here since the first of the heats. We'll have more tomorrow, so if you've missed most of it, definitely stick around until the end of this, and stick around for tomorrow's action. In fact, we'll have racing all weekend long, because this is a race for over $1,000 in the big show. But before they get there, they have to qualify into that race through these heats, DJ. We've seen 3 drivers come away with $50, but one thing that seems to be consistent is that if you can stay up the front, most of the drivers seem to be able to stay out of trouble.
Yeah, that seems to be the big way around here, and that all starts in qualifying, Joe. You've got to get a good qualifying time down and probably have your way up into the top 3 rows of the grid. That's normally where we've seen that success start to come from for these drivers. If you're farther down in the field, you're more likely to be caught up in a big incident. You're more likely yourself to have to be a little bit more aggressive to try to advance on forward, and you're more likely to cause an incident. So there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of things to keep in mind here for these drivers, but I'll tell you what, the action has been fantastic throughout.
Yeah, we've got some good racing out there in spite of a few yellows, and in fact the racing's about to start again as the grid is now lining up. So let's head down to there as Garrett Conrath will start on the pole of heat number 4, and Andrew Cootie will be in second. Roger Buff Sr. starts B3, followed by Coke driver Derek Justice starting in the 4th position. Justin Levine will be in 5th, followed by Philip Martin in 6th, and then the next row sees Brett Picari and Rick Seabrands in 7th and 8th. Jarrett Liebert will begin from 9th, and Joseph Causey will be 10th.
In 11th place, it's going to be Devin Rogers, followed by Jamie Haynes in 12th place. 13th on the grid is going to be Ryan Honeycutt, and Hayes Booth will line up to his outside. Then it's going to be Thomas Stewart in P15 and Julio Villalobos in P16. P17 will be Jake Niberius with Robert Noble in P18. P19 going to be Gene Collum, and Andrew Sonato will round out your top 20.
Kip Easley starts in 21st, followed by Ryan Huff in the 22nd position. After that, Brett Inskeep managed to qualify 24th, J.D. Larson 25th, and Jose Rodriguez in 25th. Justin Parnham and Corey Koch are gridded up at the back, but I do not see Corey Koch in here, nor Justin. I believe they were also mistakenly signed up, so they're probably going to be did not starts for this event. That's nothing new if you're just joining us for the first time. They just accidentally signed up for the wrong heat, and they'll be back a little bit later, and there will be no harm done in that sense. They start out on the parade lap, and it'll be 20 laps to decide 5 drivers that automatically get through into the duel, and we'll have a few more down to 13th that will get into the LCQs. That's P6 to P13. They have fixed setups in this series, so nobody really has any sort of trick cars out there to try and get away from everybody. And they also have a free repair if they get into trouble. That has saved a few people. Some drivers have used that and managed to sneak through. So your race is not over if that happens. And we've had one very unlucky driver go over the 17 incident limit and actually get disqualified. You do have to keep it on the black stuff out there. I know it's Daytona and it seems easy, but you got to put some effort into it.
Well, you got to put some effort in, Joe, and really and truly, it is far from easy to be running in races such as this. We talked about this a little bit earlier. The misconception on a lot of these super speedway races like Daytona, like Talladega, is that it's pretty much foot to the floor and turn left. That is not the case at all. You have got to have a very steady set of hands to be able to work your way forward, and you want to be as predictable as possible to the drivers around you to make sure that you're not going to cause any incidents and accidents over the course of the running. You're able to do those two things, think you're going to be in good position come the checkered flag.
Let's see who's going to be in a good position today as the pace car is off and Conrath has control of the fields. Heat number 4 is underway as the green flag waves here for the Podium 500. complete lap one with a little bit of juking and jiving there at the front of the pack, and unfortunately it looks like the 16 is going to get dropped down the middle of the field. Before that all happened, DJ, what struck me was perhaps the most organized first lap we've ever seen.
You read my mind, Joe. Drivers really keeping things cool and collected here in the running at this point, and you've got to respect that little bit of jostling farther back down in the field. It looks like the number 18 going to be losing some positions here as they run, as they go. Now we're starting to see maybe a little bit of running down on that low side as the momentum starts to build here, and we're starting to see a couple of drivers work their way down to that low line.
That's Joseph Causey in the 88 that's starting to make progress forward. Bottom line really dropped back because of the 16 losing the draft, but they've come back with a vengeance. Roger Buff Sr. is giving a big push, but up on the high side, it does look like Cootie and Justice are working extremely well together, finding pace on the longer line.
Yeah, just making that work, and if you're up on that high side, that really does give you more momentum going down the straightaways. The lower line is going to be the shortest distance from point A to point B, but if you're down on the low side, that's a little bit different. We take a look here at Hayes Booth. He's up on that high lane, able to carry some more momentum as he's going to hold behind right now the number 53. That's Jamie Hayes right ahead of him.
7 out there on a wing and a prayer right now, but he's within the advancing positions if he can stay put. We start lap 4, and the drivers so far have not caused any major problems yet in this one. Not for lack of trying. There have been some sketchy moves. That said, there's also been a lot of very orderly racing in between those sketchy moves, so it seems to break out into brief, frantic fights, and then it then cools down.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're seeing here, and I'm seeing a lot of jostling specifically coming down the back straightaway here at this point. This is the moment where a lot of drivers are starting to try to figure out where they can go. Now down on the low lane here, looks like they're going to carry a little bit more speed. That's going to be Joseph Causey, able to carry just a little bit more, and now behind him, Roger Buff Sr. going to be able to tuck up behind, give him a nice little bump draft, but here comes that momentum up from the high line once again.
Yeah, just working together perfectly up there. And I think the other thing that seems to be helping it is the 46 of Martin is getting very close. He's not really pushing them all that much unless the 2 disconnects from the leader. But him just tucking underneath that rear bumper seems to give them that little bit more air to get them going quicker. The 7 gets stuck in the middle, and it looks like that's going to drop some of that middle group farther back, unfortunately. They won't separate too far from what I can tell. Yeah, that gap is not that big, so they should be able to catch back up.
Yeah, credit there to Hayes Booth, actually, and Conrath, and I believe that was Honeycutt there behind him as well, as they were actually able to make it 3 wide here for a little bit. A little train of 3 cars. They're able to keep momentum going just a little bit long enough. We now ride on board with Hayes right now. This is in the number 7 machine, giving a little bit of how you doing there to Seabrands up ahead of him. That's exactly what you got to do to be able to get a good run.
Yeah, a few wobbles and a few checkups there for that top side, which is a bit unusual for how they've been racing up to now. Looks like they've got it sorted, and once again, Derek Justice is going to be pushing hard, and Cootie will reap the benefits. I do appreciate Philip Martin running that cold trickle sort of scheme up there. Well, no, excuse me, he doesn't have that on broadcast. It helps if I pay attention to that, as the 46 runs 3rd in line. And yeah, they are going to be able to complete lap 6 now. Still haven't had a caution in this one.
Knock on your Podium Esports block of wood there if you are a fan of this good kind of racing. Now we see that come back. The 46 of Philip Martin giving the push to Justice up ahead. There you can see it. We ride on board with Cootie. Cootie's now going to get a little bit of a bump from there. But look at that run down on the low line. That's Causey and Buff Sr. A great run down low.
Apology from Cootie over the radio, it seems. Not sure if he got a little squirrely or something. Just unhappy with how he ran there for a bit, but they've got it collected. And do we have everybody all in one group? No, looks like we've lost Gene Collum as well as J.D. Larson, but otherwise we've got 24 cars still in the hunt.
Yeah, a lot of drivers still here, still ready to play, still bringing their way around right now. Let's see, though, we've got a little bit of jostling there. That's going to be the number 16 coming up the middle right now.
Thinking about trying to make some moves, but we haven't seen the middle really work yet. Oh, but look at the 7. Ducking and diving. He's also going to try it, but his head of steam is suddenly halted as nobody joins in. But it looks like he is going to be able to maybe get away ahead of the 88. Causey does not give him space. We got a wreck behind them. Our first caution. Looks like Garrett Brown may be involved. Andrew Stanzo, who's backwards on the circuit. Ooh, and the 6 as well.
Yeah, that's Jake Niparis there. A very, very hard lick for him. Kind of a strange place for that car to end up in here at this point. But let's go back to check out the replay, find out exactly what happened.
I think Thomas Stewart, if we watch the 64, yeah, he'll brush the outside wall, comes down, and then those behind just wrong place, wrong time. Yeah, every single one of them involved. Unfortunately, nobody was able to squeak by.
Yeah, and that's what we've seen play out here plenty of times. A lot of difficult running here for these drivers when you have an incident that takes place in front of you, just nowhere to go. That sudden shift of lane, and Jake there, really a hapless passenger.
How did he wind up where he did? Well, that's interesting. So, just kind of scooted over the hump of the tunnel and just about wound up at the escape road, but hadn't hit much all that hard, so his car looks okay from the couple angles that we saw as we come back live. And only Zanto in the number 8 is in pit lane. Everybody else is still out there, but he may have come into the pits, I think, just because the car was too damaged to carry on.
Yeah, although interestingly here, Joe, it looks like he's staying stationary in pit lane for a long time. We may have another incident where Zanto is unfortunately forgotten to check that free repair box.
Rookie mistake. Happens to everybody at some point, but it unfortunately can be costly when you do. Garrett Brown is in, Ryan Huff, J.D. Larson, and Jake Niparis. So a few cars involved in that, taking some repairs. Those who had lost touch with the leaders are probably extremely appreciative of this yellow because it'll bring them back in on it. But since we've hit the halfway mark, why don't we get a chance to remind you once again that this year's Podium 500 is brought to you by Eric Messer Photography, the official photographer of the Madhouse, Bowman Gray Stadium. Eric is open for freelance hires for any racing organization in the Carolinas and Virginia. For more information, visit his website at e-m-photo.com. Create memories, not just photos. Well, we had to wait a bit before we got that first yellow. And the racing, I think, was honestly very good on that one, DJ. There was some fascinating moves being made. But that middle lane seems to be the one that everybody keeps desperately hoping is going to work, and very few seem to be able to do much with.
Yeah, it's interesting to see those drivers that are really trying to push their way into that middle lane. We've seen it work out for a few of them here at this point, but we haven't seen it sustain over the course of the running. So it's kind of interesting to see how it does indeed shake itself out. I would anticipate seeing a couple of drivers maybe trying to take it here for a little bit longer, trying to push down to that low lane a little bit more, or that middle lane a little bit more as time continues to roll along, but I don't think it's going to be sustainable in the long run.
Yeah, it's looking like you basically have to just kind of hop through, maybe use it as a way to get to the bottom eventually, or get to the top eventually, and not really try and stick with it. So we'll return to racing with 9 laps to go, but we've reached that halfway mark. Now that we have ticked on to lap 11 and completed lap 10. Does look like, did they all get back out on the lead lap? Nope, Zanto did not. He's a lap down, unfortunately. And he'll have to hope for a lucky dog if he wants to get back into this. So he could still maybe do something from here, just looking ever more unlikely. Unfortunately, as they go too wide, it'll be Cootie on the outside and Justice on the inside. Excuse me, reverse that, rather. And the thing that I wonder, DJ, is because of how well those two were working, will we see Cootie try to bolt and then jump up to the top like we saw a lot in Heat 3?
I wouldn't be surprised if that's exactly what we see them do. The question is for Derek Justice is how he's going to respond to that. Now, knowing Justice as we do, obviously a black stripe driver, a driver in the Coca-Cola series, we know he is very patient, very talented to be able to work his way forward. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him holding back into a position to maybe be a little bit aggressive later on in the race.
Indeed. But later on in the race is going to happen quite quickly. So I wonder how long he has before he has to start making some moves. And again, no green-white checkers. If we get 4 to go, it's going to be down to whoever was in front at the yellow. Green flag is out, and Justice does go away quickly, but instead, it is the 2 who goes to the low side. And Philip Martin lets him in.
Yes, he does, and look there behind as they continue to streak their way along. It looks like it's going to be the low lane running here as they go. A lot of drivers working their way down to the low side, and it looks like Hayes Booth is going to be the lone man out up high.
My goodness, the high line disappears quicker than your friends when the check comes. It looks like, oh, it switches back to the high line, and the 46 is the one hung out to dry. In fact, he has so little speed, nobody is willing to check up to help him out. The 5 finally plugs the hole for him, and it just completely switches around in multiple places. It's back to 2-lane racing, but take your pick on who is where.
Make that 3-lane racing as Roger Buff Sr. tries to make a move to the outside, and we're going to be 3 wide across the stripe.
Still being led by Cootie and Causey up at the front, each leading their rows as we come down to 8 laps to go now. Yeah, we've got quite a few 3 wide there in the back now, but getting jostled up to the front. It does look like they're getting a little antsy. Could we see another quick caution here?
Well, we very well might. Little bit of contact there. I think that was Jamie Haynes and Garrett Conrath there potentially getting into the side of one another, but they're going to sort themselves out. You've got to be really, really careful when you're running this wide.
And there's the wreck in the background. Looks like the 4 involved. The 11 got a piece of it. The 3 gets a big chunk. I think the 5 as well. Oh, man. Real big mess there coming through 3 and 4. And I believe this starts with the 42 of Brett Inskeep.
Yeah, there you can see it. Just multiple drivers getting involved in it right there. An absolute stack up. Let's take a closer look here as they come down into the corner. We've got our eyes here on the 42 of Inskeep. He comes down through 3 and, oh, contact there with the 5. That was Liebert that just touched him ever so slightly.
It just seems like 3 wide today has not been working all that well here. We often talk about Daytona being a more narrow track than Talladega, where 3 wide's very common. And here it's been causing us multiple problems all throughout the heats. This time costing a lot of drivers a spare car or even a potential shot at the win. Big old slam there with the USA car up into the outside wall, and the 5 gets him for a second time on the way back down the banking.
Yeah, it's a little bit of insult to injury there for the USA car, but now we're going to reform here. Joe, I think we're going to be restarted with about 5 laps to go. We'll have to see if some of that aggression is restrained from some of these drivers now that we get into these final moments. It can really go one of 2 ways. You get into a big incident, you learn your lesson, and you don't make any more of those little mistakes, or you know it's almost closing time and you are going to be pushing like the Dickens to get your way back forward.
Well, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. You got to get to the checkered flag first. A couple cars in, Liebert, Brown, Inskeep, and Rodriguez. Checking to see if any of them have already used their spare car. No, amazingly, they have all managed to hold on to it, so hopefully they'll be able to get back out on the track. Because I worried that maybe there's so many involved, we could see a few more DNFs on this one, but that appears to not be the case. The bad news is, though, you talked about needing to cool off after that. If it is only 5 laps, I don't know that they can really afford to cool off. I wonder if we're going to see more wrecks from the back of the field as they try to scrabble just to get up into the top 13.
Yeah, we very well could. It could be a little bit of column A, could be a little bit of column B. It's one of the great things about racing that we're not entirely going to know how this is going to shake itself out, and we don't know what the anticipation, what the mindset of these drivers are going to be. So we're going to have to wait to find that out until we go back to green flag racing here in about a lap and a half's time.
It's why we love sport. Nobody knows how it's going to end. Even up here in the booth, we have only the best inklings that we can go on, but we just have to wait and see exactly how it's going to unfold. But Cootie's been doing a fantastic job in this race, really controlling it. I wonder at what point that friendship that he seems to have formed with Cootie, or with Justice, finally dissipates. Will Derek abandon him at the right time, that he can take that win away, or will he stay with it just to ensure that he winds up in second place and gets his automatic through to the duels?
Well, we'll have to see. I think if I was in Derek's position, if I were any of these drivers up into the top 5, I wouldn't be too fussed about maybe that $50. Yes, that's a great incentive, and it's going to get you a little bit better up in the running. But at the same time, I would want to advance rather than going for the $50. So I think I'm going to play nice here. At least that's my inkling, Joe.
And Derek knows of the importance of getting through, because he actually won one of the duels back in 2021, which is also a nice little payout of its own. So again, maybe that's the thought process. If I can just make it to the bigger one, you know, it's the kid with the marshmallows. We'd rather have 2 than just 1 on the plate. And if he just sits and waits and lets the second place come in, if that's a lot more sure thing for him, then maybe he'll have a better shot at getting an even bigger win later on. Granted, he could get both, but it's a risk-reward scenario as we come back to 2 wide into turns 3 and 4. We haven't lost any of our drivers. Sadly for Ryan Huff, he's not been able to get that lucky dog and get back onto the lead lap. He's the only driver essentially out of the hunt for the win. Everybody else still on the same lap as Andrew Cootie. The pace car is going to let Andrew go. He's pulling a bit of a Max Verstappen there, coming right up next to that pace car and hassling the poor iRacing driver. There goes the iRacing pace car. Controls given over to the number 9, and the green flag comes out almost immediately in that restart zone. And the 2, as we saw before, ducks down behind and hooks up with the 9 car.
Going to give a nice little push. Looks like they're going to debate here for a second, but they're going to hook up on the high lane. That's the 7 there of Hayes Booth. A little bit indecisive, but he's going to be able to get everything together. It looks like it's the 53 there of Jamie Haynes that's going to be left out to dry. Now we've got a car moving down to the low side. A lot of movement down the back stretch.
Low side goes nowhere. In fact, the 15 seems to have got no friends and is going to get hung out to dry. No, somebody's going to jump up with him, the 23, and that unfortunately causes a wreck. He gets into the 26. Are we going to stay green? Multiple cars getting into one another. Nobody's gotten sideways, 4 wide, and they continue to wreck at the back. Still no yellow. There it is.
There it is.
The 6 and the 15, unfortunately, finally brought it out. That was the longest run to a yellow I've seen a wreck take.
Yeah, same here, Joe, and I think crucially, this may be it for everyone. We'll have to see how everything shakes out, but yeah, just a slow wreck in slow motion here. The 15 and the 6 up on the high lane. You see all of those cars scrunched together down low. The 18 getting spun around, and then the 6 and getting involved again. They just got stuck together, and that's what eventually triggered the yellow flag here from iRacing.
Feels like the cartoon dad being spun around and balancing the plates on his fingers, and then it all comes crashing down in the end anyways, as they slow down. If it is it, Cootie will take the win, and Justice will be second. Causey Booth and Conrath will be the last ones to advance through into the duels, and the 23 of Justin Levine, I think, is going to be the last one to get to the LCQ. But we're hearing a lot of chatter over the radio. I'm not sure. I missed most of it. I'm not sure if that's drivers being instructed to get back in front of other drivers.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I do want to give a shout out here to our Twitch chat. Comment of the session for me is we could have had a commercial break during that wreck, which I fully agree with. That's fantastic. Thank you to the Twitch chat. We are keeping an eye on it.
I'll have to hold on to that one. That is a great quip there as they come across the line. And yeah, that's it. They didn't go double file here, so it is going to be the end of the race under yellow once again. Actually, did we end under? Yeah, we ended under yellow for the third one as well. So we have yet to finish under green.
Little bit of an interesting condition here for these drivers, but thankfully everybody taking it in step, being able to work their way through the field to the best of their abilities. We're just going to have to see, though, what shakes out in heat race number 5 as we are coming on that rather quickly.
Absolutely. And it's been cooling down in this session, also worth noting, as the sun has gone down a bit. And we've been getting some cloud cover on this. So it's only 75 Fahrenheit today. But we sadly did not get to see the drivers use that extra grip to take it to the end of the race. But it looks like they are in order now. But still, there's a lot of driver chat over the radio that I haven't been paying super close attention to, if I'm honest. So I'm not sure what is the big discussion on this one. Even still, it's going to be down to 1 to go when they cross the line with the white flag, and the pace car will lead Cootie around on what will essentially be a victory lap.
Yes, indeed, it will. A very, very well-deserved victory lap here for Cootie. That was some very good racing up at the front of the field. I've got to be able to give them credit for keeping everything together. Very, very good running and very heads up from Cootie and Justice. I'd be watching out for them when we get to the finals here.
Indeed. So they continue to dutifully plod along behind the pace car. Roger Buff Sr. comes into pit lane, I guess maybe to try and just work his way to the finish with oh no, he's got a black and orange flag. So can he get to the finish, or does he have to take the repairs here? Oh man, hopefully he's got that spare car. Well, that's going to be a real shame if he can't even just bring it around to the checkered flag here at the end.
Yeah, that's going to be a real shame for him. I hope that's not what ends up playing out here for him. But we will have to see exactly what that does. This is the final lap here for all these drivers.
The top 13 probably pumping their fists, happy that they've lived to fight another day and make it to either the LCQ or the duels on this one. At least Justice will be back there again. Whether or not he can win it, we'll see. And for those wondering why we're making such a big deal out of these black stripe drivers, for an idea, a list of some of these winners, and if you are familiar with the pro-level racers on iRacing, see if you recognize any of these. Former winners: Blake Peterson, Casey Kerwin, Daniel Eberhardt, Seth DeMerchant. Former pole sitters: Logan Helton, Jimmy Mullis, Matt Quick, Michael Conti. Former dual winners: Seth DeMerchant, Casey Kerwin, Derek Justice, Logan Clampett, Nick Otger, Femi Olat. So yeah, Black Stripe does you well here to get up to the top. But in this case, Andrew Cootie didn't need one. The number 9 is going to take the win and the $50 in heat number 4.
A great run here for Cootie, and that was really and truly all teamwork up at the front of the field there from him, between him and Derek Justice. That's exactly the way you want to try to get a move done here when you're talking about winning at Daytona.
A little bit of a bump of celebration from Hayes Booth there. Not sure if that's a teammate or a friend, as the two of them are actually chatting over the radio, trading some jokes with one another. He's giving him the hurry up to say, go, do your burnouts, bud. It's time to celebrate. And I'm sure he'll have some fun. Let's see if he manages to do. We've had, I feel like this is just as entertaining to me as the, oh no, oh. Don't wreck each other. You haven't got there yet. It's been just as entertaining to me DJ, seeing how good of a donut we can get out of these winners. Some of them I've been a little bit disappointed in, if I'm frank.
Yeah, I have as well. You've got to see a little bit more out of them, trying to see what they are able to do. You really and truly, you expect more at this point.
Maybe they just haven't had the practice for getting these wins and really getting the celebration donuts. Here we go. What's the 9 going to do? He's going to flick it around into the grass. There we go. And just give it a huge drift. So that's satisfactory, I think. That's a good enough celebration as he brings it to a halt and does some donuts now, tearing up the turf down in the infield. All right, then, let's go through our finishing order. Andrew Cootie takes the win and the $50 in his pocket as Derek Justice was second and Causey was third. Hayes Booth just outside the podium still gains 10 places for fourth. And Gareth Conrath was P5. Julio Villalobos Jr. was 6th, then Brent Pancari P7, and Robert Noble 8th. Philip Martin finished P9 today. Jamie Haynes rounds out your top 10 as Rick Seabrands was 11th, Gene Collin was 12th, and Justin Levine is your last to advance into the LCQs.
From there on out, it's easily Honeycutt, Rogers, Rodriguez, Stewart, Inskeep, and Zanso that are going to round out your top 20 and 21st. It was Garrett Brown, then J.D. Larson, Ryan Huff, and Roger Buff Sr. rounding out the back of the grid there with Liebert, Nipris, Parham, and Cook, the end of the order, Joe.
Sad to see them go so early, but somebody's got to get cut out because the Podium 500 can only have so many drivers. We'll have the final heat of the night coming up after this.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Welcome back to Daytona International Speedway. Once again, I'm Joe Peak here with DJ Clark on Podium Esports, covering the heat races for the Podium 500, the first of a couple nights of that. And, well, we've had 4 heat races. We have the 5th and final one of this evening. But the big thing that we're hoping for, DJ, is will we get a green flag finish? Because we've yet to have a single one.
Yeah, we're yet to have a single one, but Joe, I've got to tell you, when we look at the names coming into this heat race, it's one of the more stacked names, stacked fields that we've really ever seen. So I think we've got a very good chance to keep things clean and green here, because drivers, they're going to know what they're doing as they try to push their way forward on the grid.
Yeah, a couple former winners in amongst this. We've got Casey Kerwin in terms of the pro class drivers out there. So, yeah, this is going to be pretty interesting to witness. And they do try to even out these fields so that it doesn't have too many big names in one thing. But it's by iRating. So sometimes you can wind up with a lot of heavy hitters in one place. It looks like those heavy hitters have finished their qualifying. So let's go through our starting order. Casey Kerwin actually took the pole at the very end of it over Tyler Krupp, who qualified in second. Jeff Bergener will start from P3. Corey Cook will be fourth. Gary Sexton, there's a familiar name, starting P5, as Mark Math will begin in 6th, and Matthew Stalknecht will start from P7. Spencer Burns starts 8th today. William Schmidt will be on the inside of row 5 in 9th, and Julian Ricci rounds out your top 10.
It's going to be Daniel Eberhardt in P11, followed by Bill Schoonover in P12, then Mike Kirk and Cody Baldwin in row 7 behind them. Row 8 is going to be Chris Shoemaker, followed by Mitchell Howell in P16. P17 is going to be Jay McDonald and Eric Papineau in P18. P19 will be Louis Ettinger, and David Duke rounds out your top 20.
Only 3 more in this one. Anthony Poston, Adam Cabot, and it'll be Cole Larson. I'm going to have to teach myself not to say Kyle. Cole Larson starts from the back of the field in the very last position. And they are gridded up and ready to go. If you have not been watching up to now, well, this is going to be an interesting, quick race at only 20 laps. And there's money on the line, not just in the big race, but in this one, $50 to win your heat. No green, white checkers. If we get a yellow towards the end and there's not enough laps, that's it. Race is over. That's your finishing order. Fixed setup. Nobody can find any sort of special setup on these cars. They have one fast repair in case they get damaged and want to get back into it. That has definitely come in handy for a few of them. And make sure to keep it clean, 17 incidents, to keep you out of trouble and keep you from having too many problems. Now, only the top 5 will go to the duels automatically. That doesn't get them into the big race, the Podium 500 automatically. You have to go to the duels next. That's the step below. And then one step below the duels will be the LCQs. That's P6 through P13 that will have there. Anybody else below 13th, well, they're done. There's no more racing for them in any of the events this weekend. So we head down the backstretch one last time this evening, DJ. What's it going to be for this one?
I think it's all about patience. It's all about consistency here, Joe. You don't want to be too aggressive too early. We've seen drivers be able to make some moves, but you don't want to make those moves too early and run the risk of getting ourselves into a yellow breed yellow kind of situation. You want to keep everything calm and collected early on and position yourself to be in the run for the end.
All right. Well, Kerwin holds control of the fields. His fellow black stripe driver last time took second place instead of trying to fight for that win, pushed to the leader pretty much the entire way. Will Casey be like that, or will he and someone else work together to try to get to the finish fast, but not necessarily with Casey in the lead? Green flag is out. We're going to get one last heat tonight for the Podium 500. We got a wreck in the back early on. It looks like Cody Baldwin unfortunately got spun off. No yellow because of it. Jay McDonald's also losing touch with the draft, but you see them completing lap 1 with Croup jumping up ahead. Corey Cook joins him on the bottom lane, and they'll steal the lead away from Casey Kerwin. Top line currently being led by Mark Math in the 199.
Yeah, and that's going to be Burns there behind him. I believe Spencer Burns in the number 12, giving him a nice little bit of a push. We ride on board with Gary Sexton here, currently in 8th place. He's dropped down the order just a little bit, but again, momentum looking like it's favoring that bottom lane here as drivers are just bailing up on the high side.
Yeah, it's going backwards in a hurry. Math is getting a push, but I don't know if he got some damage or what, but they're literally going backwards despite the 12 trying to push him even through the corners, which is sketchy in its own right. He's going to give up on that. He's going to get on the bottom line too.
Yeah, Burns is going to bail on that as he's going to go. Now we've got a little bit of a look here. I think that's the 23 machine trying to make a move up to the high side as he runs. It doesn't look like that's frankly going to play itself out. Is now that's going to be Burns coming in behind him. Is that actually the 13? The numbers are a little hard to read on that machine as they work their way through.
Yeah, that's the 13 on the bottom there with Gary Sexton. The 12 is Spencer Burns on the top. Now they're going somewhere. He's pushing William Schmidt, but Casey Kerwin likes the look of it. He thinks he's going to get a shove, and then abandoning to the bottom, it seems like William Schmidt likes the looks of the 16. Tyler Krupp once again getting the nod.
Yeah, and Mark Math going to be the lone man out there in the middle of the pack. You see drivers trying to work their way around him as now he's going to find space up on the high lane, so that's going to be a good run for him. It's about the top 15 have started a breakaway here. Mitchell Howell back in 16th, all the way back about 5 seconds behind. He's going to be out of this unless we get a yellow flag.
Yeah, there's a lot of cars that are on their own back there, which is really bad news because they're not going to be able to work together, and they're all going to fall apart unless they get a yellow. But the way these guys are racing, that might be likely. Down the middle goes the number 20, I believe. No, that's the 90 of Eberhardt, actually. Former winner of the Podium 500. Surely he knows what he's doing. Maybe his spidey senses are tingling.
Maybe they are. Casey Kerwin trying to get a little bit of a side draft there off of the cars in front of him. Now they're going to leave the 16 of Krupp out to dry there, and Krupp's going to find his way falling down through the order in that middle lane.
Fascinating how quickly it can change. Oh, but he gets clobbered, and there's our first yellow. Looks like he gets collected by Jeff Bergener, and I think that is Gary Sexton.
Yeah, I think he was involved in that as well, and that's the danger, Joe. When you leave a driver out to dry running in that middle lane, that is exactly what can happen if you're not careful.
Math was a fourth party. Watch him. He gets caught up in it, unfortunately. If he had ducked low, he maybe would have gotten away with it, but because he was up high, yeah, see, everybody below him got away, and he got a big face full of wrecked cars.
Yeah, just nowhere to go for him there at that point. We take another look at the replay here at this point, riding on board with Matt, the number 199. Here you can just kind of see it all taking place. Nowhere for him to go. I don't know how much damage. Looks like there's a little bit on the right front fender of that machine, but I think he probably avoided any significant thwacks.
Yeah, that one came about in a bit of an odd way. One thing I have noticed is that it seems like the majority of our accidents have been in the corners 1 and 2 or 3 and 4, especially a lot of them seem to be in 3 and 4. But that one happened between the tri-oval and turn 1, and it almost seemed to be mostly because of Krupp just kind of stuck in the middle, and a car maybe just moved up when he moved down, and they all kind of hooked.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened, and they got themselves thrown out a little bit there as they ran. Now we're going to have to re-rack and restack. Casey Kerwin again back at the lead of the field, but Spencer Burns is going to be the car behind him here at this point.
Well, before we get back to racing, one last time, we want to tell you about this year's Podium 500 being brought to you by Eric Messer Photography, the official photographer of the Madhouse, Bowman Gray Stadium. Eric is open for freelance hires for any racing organization in the Carolinas and Virginia. For more information, visit his website at e-m-photo.com. Create memories, not just photos. Does look like we got Gary Sexton into pit lane. Bergener and Jay McDowell is going to join. Jay McDonald, excuse me. And Chris Shoemaker also going to go on in. So maybe Math did get away without damage because he's going to stay out and try and his luck is, somebody missed that was Gary actually missing his pit stall and had to back into it. Won't hurt him too bad with this being under yellow, but still embarrassing right on camera. I'm sure he appreciates that moment being caught right there. As you said, Kerwin Burns leading. William Schmidt, I'm going to keep an eye on that one because, again, he got a really good shove, then saw an opening. Instead of going with Kerwin, just kind of ducked down to the bottom, and that seemed to serve him well. So I'm wondering if the 79 himself is a pretty savvy guy and will have some moves up his sleeve later in the race.
Yeah, we'll have to see. The other two that I'm going to be keeping my eye on here, Joe, are going to be Adam Cabot and David Duke. They're up 16 and 13 positions, respectively. That is an absolutely remarkable run up through the field.
So, yeah, it looks like they've taken advantage of the fact that passing here is quite easy and been staying out of trouble. Those that had lost touch with the pack definitely very appreciative, I'm sure, that it gets backed up once again and restarts. Looks like they're going to be going, I think, green, not this time by, but next time by. So it'll be on lap 9 that will get restarted here. And just about half the race in this last heat of the night left to go. Again, if you're just joining in and didn't hear us earlier, we have more heats coming up tomorrow night. Make sure and tune in on Podium Esports for that. That'll be 8 p.m. Eastern. So lots more racing to go. And even after that, after the heats are over, we'll have the LCQs, we'll have the duels, and then eventually we'll have the Podium 500 to see who gets that 1,000+ payout here for the weekend as they double up once again. Kerwin didn't seem all that eager to try and hold on to the lead. Those two cars managed to slide in front of him quite quickly, DJ. So I wonder if, again, this is Casey just figuring it's not worth trying to challenge every lap of the race and just try and stay in these top 5 for now.
Well, I think it's partially that, Joe, and partially that Casey may not be all that familiar with some of these drivers around him. He may not be familiar with their driving style, and so he could be taking the first half of this race to just sort of study them, figure out what they're doing, figure out how they're going to drive around him, and that's going to inform how he's going to want to drive in the last 5 laps of this race.
Okay, so we'll see. This will give us a better indication once we see how he starts to race here closer to the end now. If there's any shift in it, if he gets more aggressive, or if he will just kind of let a few cars pass him and ensure that he stays within the top 5 up until the end of this event. The iRacing pace car is going to be ducking in. Need to come up with some sort of iRacing make for them, some sort of brand for that instead of just the iRacing pace cars. The green flag waves, and instead of the 12 getting the jump, Kerwin almost goes ahead of him at the start. Will we see drivers try to get ahead of one another once again? Now Kerwin's getting a nice little push from behind him. That is Stallnecht in the number 41, and nobody's really managed to get a huge jump ahead of the other, though, until right about now. He could duck down if he wants. He chooses not to. He's going to hold the top side. And does this mean that the top side is once again coming into play?
Well, that's what we've seen from a lot of these races, but with so much swapping back and forth that we saw earlier on, I'm not sure exactly how that's going to be. Now it looks like, I believe that's the 58 there. That's David Duke hooking up with the back of the field here right at this point. He's going to have his pickup lanes as they go. Ooh, that was a little bit of a sketchy move there with the 61 of Corey Cook. Able to get together, but now here comes the rest of the field.
Oh, and the 23 nearly loses it, shoot in the middle of the 90, hooks up with the 12. That actually works out in the end, at least for the 12, not for the 90, as Kerwin still manages to find speed in comparison, and Stallnecht is pushing him like the Dickens. Cabot is going to have to try again later.
Yeah, he's going to have to try again, but now that this field has really compacted itself, it's all back together here, the whole field running as a big one right now. And here we see a big push down on the inside. That's going to be Burns and Eberhardt getting a huge run.
Oh, the 90 now dips out from behind Cabot and decides he likes being in the clean air. He's going to get Casey to try and push on him. Spencer Burns in the meantime, unfortunately, well, no, he's not going to drop back. Looks like he's got a nice little run from Will Schmidt, and they can't get the speed off the corner, but maybe this will come back to them once they get back into 3 and 4, and it's a shorter line as they once again swing into the banking. It's going to be 9 to go at the line.
And 9 to go at the line. We're over halfway here at this point. It looks like we've got 2 pretty substantiated lines here forming themselves out. A little bit of bumps, a little bit of pushes here and there, but we're not seeing all that much swapping, and crucially, we're not seeing anybody left out to dry there in the middle.
Eberhardt and Kerwin. Whoa, we got a car spun to the inside. Trying to make out who that is. That's Mike Kirk. He keeps it from becoming a wreck. No yellow. And I was going to say, Eberhardt and Kirk, that is a bad combo at the front if you're everyone else, because, again, 2 former winners.
Yeah, that is going to be very, very tough, and now Mike's going to have to try to be able to get his way forward, but here we've got Kerwin giving that big push to Eberhardt. It's going to be bad news for the rest of the field, but the low line here trying to do what they can to see if they can claw their way back. Spencer Burns still running that low line, although it looked like we had a couple of drivers working their way back up high.
Oh my goodness, Burns is going extremely slow, and it causes a big checkup at the back. The bottom line has all but dissipated. And whoa, is that Math? Yeah, that was Math trying to go to the bottom and lead that group. He didn't do such a hot job the first time. Let's see if this one goes better.
Yeah, let's see if this is going to play out for him. He's got a little bit momentum behind him right now. That's going to be the number 97 machine of Julian Ricci, being able to give some good momentum. You got to be careful here. We've almost got a 3-wide situation coming into the corner. That's not where you want to be going 3 wide.
Still nobody works with Math. For some reason, being in the front of the queue doesn't add up for him. So he'll fall backwards as the top line now is almost 9 cars ahead of the bottom. And Eberhardt, Kerwin, Stallnecht, your top 3 currently. We come down to 7 to go.
7 to go here. The high lane continuing to be strong as drivers are just trying to get this bottom lane to work, but it looks like absolutely nobody wants to be on it, and nobody's going to be able to make it work. Almost contact farther there in the back. The 97 moving this way and that, caught in a 3-wide situation.
He calms it down, thankfully, so we don't get a wreck out of that. At least currently ahead of them, somebody off once again. Is that Shoemaker? Trying to make out who that is. No, that's Schoonover in the 9. And thankfully is able to get back onto the track just before the grass as he bounces over it, but he's way off pace. Look at this top group, single file. We've hardly seen that at all day long.
No, we haven't, Joe, but it really and truly is just playing out to perfection here for them. Casey Kerwin giving a nice big push to Eberhardt up in front. These 2 look as calm as a cucumber and doing exactly what they need to do.
Math might still be able to catch back up there. Yeah, he's going to be able to pull them in, and he'll try that bottom line once again. But, well, the 93 is going to join him. That's Mitchell Howell. And still, they don't seem to be making much progress. Now the 17 jumps in front. Oh, big moment there for Burns. Excuse me, that's the 12, not the 17. And then he decides against it. David Duke in the 58 heads to the bottom. So they keep trying. They're giving it everything on that bottom line, but nothing's coming together.
Well, they've only got 4 cars working on that low lane here at this point. I'd be thinking about maybe jumping down if I were one of these other cars. We got a spin. That's Math getting spun around across the stripe.
Caution is out as he spins. It's a light blow up against the wall for Math, but this is going to check them up with just enough laps left, and I think maybe a 1-lap shootout here.
Yeah, I think that's where it's going to come down to, and this just looked like a simple case of pushing the pusher a little bit, and that's going to be a spin around there for Math. Didn't make a whole lot of contact, maybe just a little bit on that rear fender, but nothing too big there, and Math is going to be able to get that pink and black machine turned back around.
On top of things, pushing in the tri-oval generally is frowned upon by most drivers, so not sure that's going to sit all that well, but I don't think that was an intentional push. I think it just kind of wound up getting next to him, and he didn't mean to. and Math just got a little bit clipped on that left-hand side. So we still have all drivers on the lead lap, incredibly, all 23 of them out there and running on the same lap as Daniel Eberhardt, who's trying to catch up with the pace car still, actually. Are we going to get restarted here?
I think we should, Joe. With 4 laps to go, it should be 3 laps under caution here, including this one. So I think we're okay, but we'll have to see.
If it is a one-lap shootout, that means we actually finally will finish under green, but only because we'll be forced to in this situation. They can't bring out the yellow flag as soon as that white comes out. We'll see if that winds up being the case. If it is a 2-lap shootout, then they could still finish under caution. So your order is Eberhardt, Kerwin, Stallnet, Cabot, Cook. There's your top 5 that'll advance through as it sits currently. But when they get racked up to 2 wide for the restart, obviously it's a bit of a crapshoot on who is ahead of who. And if you're in that 3rd row, we do somehow get a caution very quickly at the end. Well, let's just hope that luck is on your side.
Yeah, let's hope luck is on your side. This is going to be really fascinating to see how this plays out, Joe, because where we saw that high lane being so dominant on the way around here, you're going to be starting off in 2 wide formation, and that's going to throw things off. You're going to have to see some drivers seeing what they can do. We may see the low lane come into play here, as it'll take a little bit for these cars to get up to momentum.
Sure will. Right now, they're just coming back around, so if it is going to restart, they're going to need to get the 1 to go this next time by. Otherwise, the race is over. And it'll be the top 5 that I mentioned, the last ones that automatically go to the duels. 13th right now, Julian Ricci in the number 97. So there's your last car to make it to the LCQ if things end as they sit now. But we're still ahead of ourselves. We don't know what's going to happen. We're not sure how this final heat of the night will go. And we just have to wait and watch and see. But it's been a very different race, pretty much every single one we've seen. Some have just been nothing but cautions. Some have been a mix. Some, like the very first one, man, it was, I guess we should have appreciated it when we could have, DJ. We only had 2 cautions in that whole race, and that wound up being the cleanest one we had.
Yeah, it certainly did. And it just goes to show you, when you race here at Daytona, it can be just about everything under the sun for all of these drivers. You have got to be on your toes for absolutely everything, because you never know what can happen. Now let's keep our eyes here, because this is going to be crucial, keeping our eye on the pace car and what those lights are going to be when they come across the stripe here.
Lights are out. We're going racing for 1 lap. They won't even fully get up to speed here at Daytona. And it's a question of who can put themselves in what position. Do not throw it away, I think, is going to be key here, DJ. You can so easily make a silly move and wind up out of the top 13 since you won't get a yellow to help you.
Exactly, Joe, and I think for a lot of these drivers, you've got to be careful about trying to make that move, trying to go for that risky move down to the inside, trying to take this 3 wide. Yes, you could get some good momentum and charge your way forward, but you could also find yourself plummeting down the order if you're not careful, so you've got to balance that risk and reward.
For the top few, is the $50 that enticing that you want to risk it? Do you just settle in behind, if you're someone like Eberhardt there, maybe getting behind Kerwin and just pushing one another to the finish to ensure you both get through? Or do you try for the $50 to make sure that you can have a nice meal some nights and go out and treat yourself? We'll get the 1 lap to go and just about a corner. Who is going to get that last win of the evening?
Well, this is the moment for all of these drivers. You've got to quell those nerves. You can't be thinking about the end. You have just got to think about getting to it and making sure you do it cleanly.
Somebody slotted up into line extremely late there. Not sure what was going on. But whatever the case, the pace car is now into pit lane We wait for the green as they approach the restart zone. There it is. Green flag is out. Kind of a checkup on that high line as the top four come together. But it does look like Eberhardt is going to be able to start to lead away as they pick up pace. Be careful, boys.
Be careful, we've got that third lane working. It's now the 23 up on the high line. That's Andrew Cabot's going to get forced out as we've got a little bit of bump in here coming up through turns 1 and 2.
23 is not going to like that, but he finds some speed off the corner. Can't quite get down low into the line. Right now it's still Eberhardt leading. Jeff Bergener is the last amongst them, but they are frantic back there. In fact, they're going to cause a wreck in the middle of the pack, and it looks like that's going to take about 2 or 3 cars out of the running. Up at the front, Daniel Eberhardt is clear ahead of everybody. Will he be able to take this $50? A few cars almost losing it, coming to the line. It's going to be close, coming around the outside. Who's going to win the $50? It's going to be Eberhardt by 7 thousandths of a second.
And look at that, Schmidt, Kerwin, and Stallknecht, they're so very close, separated only by about 1.5 seconds. That is all the distance between 1 and 5.
Duke, our last one that goes automatically into the duels. Louis Ettinger finished in 13th. And guess who wound up the first one outside looking in? Poor Gary Sexton. For those that don't know, he actually works for this channel, and poor guy, I guess, doesn't have anything biased in his favor just for working for Podium, because even he couldn't find his way into the big show this weekend. But Daniel Eberhardt takes it around to the start finish where he knows how to celebrate. He's not going to sit and make us wait for this one. He comes around to spin out and drift to the Daytona logo immediately. Great job there for the 90 to take the victory today. Let's take a look at our finishing order after that. As I mentioned, Daniel Eberhardt was your winner, with William Schmidt finishing in second position. Casey Kerwin actually wound up only third today, but still he makes it through. Matthew Stallknecht was fourth, and David Duke from 20th to 5th, 15 positions gained. Nice job. Corey Cook, just shy, but he'll get to go to the LCQ in that 6th position. Adam Cabot in 7th, and Cole Larson was 8th, up from 23rd, another 15 position gain. Spencer Burns, 9th place for him, followed by Eric Papanow in the 10th spot. Anthony Poston was 11th as Mitchell Howell finishes 12th, and Louis Ettinger will be the last to advance today.
You heard us mention it. Gary Sexton was your first driver out here, followed by Julian Ritchie, then Byron McDonald, Bill Schoonover, Cody Baldwin, Chris Shoemaker, Tyler Krupp, Mike Kirk, Mark Math, and Jeff Bergener, rounding out the grid here of 23.
Well, there was our 5 heats for the day. We'll have 5 more tomorrow night as well. So definitely make sure and tune in for that. And again, that's tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern for the further 5 heat races in the Podium 500. A huge thanks goes to our team tonight, DJ, Ryan, Cameron, and Dougie. And none of this is possible without those behind the scenes at Podium Esports, Ryan Bauer, Gary Sexton, and John Theodore. Thank you so much for watching tonight's broadcast of the Podium 500 heat races. I'm Joe Peak, and until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.